Goodness gracious. Okay, so hopefully that got through everything. Can everybody hear us okay now? I think now we're officially live.
Thumbs up if you can hear us.
There we go. Okay,
Awesome.
we are
All right.
finally live. Okay, sorry about that. This is freaking awesome. Okay, how's it going, everybody? So let's go down the line again. We already saw that we have Persistent Wolf Billiards here. Isaac the Amish Boy, welcome back. Tristan, thanks for tuning in again, bud. We got Russian Crush Gaming. We got Jim from Bang Time Pool. I see Scooper JS. We got Roopster. We got G-Man. Everybody's starting to trickle on in. Michael Price, how's it going? What is that? Cadillac MC. Surf Topics. That's actually one of your clients.
Oh, yeah. I wonder if that's who. Well, anyway. Okay.
Okay, so here we go. This is working out now. We got already at least 38 people. So how are we doing tonight, everybody? If you're just now tuning in, if you're not aware, I'm currently in Minnesota. And if you're not familiar with who this gentleman is, you need to check out some of our my pool coaching lesson videos where I have Nate from the Cue It Up podcast and Demetrius from MN Pool Bootcamp, MN for Minnesota, which is where I'm at. I'm here with Demetrius taking his 3-day boot camp, and I was able to talk him into sitting in on a live stream so you guys can actually get to talk to him and get to know him a little bit and be able to figure out a little bit about what he does here at the boot camp with whatever he's willing to share. So this is going to be awesome. But before we go into a little bit of everything, Demetrius, why don't you tell everybody like how long have you been playing pool and like what really got you started in this game?
I do have to shout out. I thought that's who that was. Hey, Surf Topic. Hey, Brian. I figured that was you. I don't have many surfers up here, so okay. Thanks for tuning in. What got me started into pool? Well, it's interesting. I grew up. My dad played pool when he was younger in his college days, um, and so when I was a little kid, once in a while we'd be in a spot where there was a pool table, and the kids would be playing, and then the adults would go and play a few games of pool, and it was always kind of this cool, like I don't know, not forbidden fruit, but it was always this alluring thing that was going on where these people were not just pocketing balls, but playing position and running balls, and it was like and sometimes the kids would play on a pool table and it would just be like banging balls around. But then there was these players that actually knew how to play. Ooh. So then when I was 12, my dad received from my grandfather. My grandfather bought him a pool table, a 9-foot pool table for Christmas because he knew that my dad played some pool. So when I was 12, we ended up with a 9-foot pool table. And I played recreationally for about a year. And then what changed things was my dad took me to a pool hall. And at that time, I didn't even know pool halls existed. I just thought the pool was something that you saw in people's basements or at a bar. And there was this building with nothing but pool tables and 9-foot pool tables and all these people playing. And one thing that stood out in my memory is this one guy was throwing 9 balls on the table and then running them in order. And then he'd throw 9 balls on the table and run them in order again. And he was just casually prowling around the table, running through these tables. And I mean, I am this 12-year-old kid banger, and I didn't know that pool could look like what he made that game look like. And his confidence and his, it just looked so sublime. I just then and there, I just decided I want to do that. And so then after that, I got the bug and I started playing pool.
So, but you started playing pool. What does that mean? Does that mean you were playing more in the basement, or did you keep coming to the pool hall that like where it all started? Like, what was really the bug, and when did the growth actually start occurring?
Yeah, I want to be a little bit. I don't want to be a bad influence on any minors that might be listening. So but let's just say that I sacrificed, something that work and that the pool and school had a little bit of a conflict at times. There was once my dad showed me that pool hall. I mean, I'd cut out of school at noon, go there when they opened at noon, play till midnight, go home, and then practice the shots I missed. And yeah, I played 10, 12 hours a day for like 4 or 5 years. So yeah, that's kind of what happens, So yeah, you get a little carried away.
Well, okay, so if you practice that long for 4 or 5 years straight, especially at a young age, so now we're talking like you're 17, like you're in your late teens. Like, when did you decide to basically say that I'm a good enough player to compete in like some good tournaments or whatever? Basically, to start entering into the money realm of the pool game.
Yeah, so it's actually interesting. There's a reason that I did not get high enough level. When I was 17, I was playing pretty good. I mentioned earlier to you that I ran an 83 ball run, which isn't bad. I was playing good enough to beat all the players in town, and I was, had a kind of a future, but it was clear to me that I wasn't on track to get to the highest level of pool. But what stopped me was I had a couple of experiences where I just got old enough at 17, 18 to kind of realize the life that a lot of these professional players live. And, well, you know what? I'm going to tell you, because this is what you guys are listening for. Maybe you've heard this on the podcast. I don't know that I've told this story, but maybe I did. But I had kind of a nightmare where because at that time, all I wanted was to be the best pool player in the world. And so I gave up my weekends, and I gave up, other hobbies or other interests or any kind of diversity of life. And I gave up all this because I was like, that's the difference, and that's why I'm going to be the best. And I had this one-track mind. But in this nightmare, I was at this auction, and I was bidding for a professional pool career. And I was like, I'm getting that world championship. That's mine. I don't care what it costs. Whatever. That's mine. I've made up my mind. I'm getting that. Nothing's going to stop me. That was my attitude for 5 years, and I sacrificed everything. And then somewhere in this auction, the bidding kept going higher and higher. And I was old enough to start to look ahead in my life and to see what that's going to cost me, because this auctioneer was asking if I wanted to, would I give up a career? Would I give up a house? Would I give up a family? Would I give up the opportunity for children? What would I give up? And as the bidding was getting higher and higher, and I was like, yeah, I was leaning forward. I'm eager. I'm like, I don't care. I'll give it up. And then it got to like, not to be a little dramatic, but it kind of almost, it wasn't this clear because it's a dream, but it was like almost like my soul. And for the first time I hesitated. And that's the first time in 5 years that I'd actually hesitated about what am I willing to pay here? And I hesitated. And in that moment of hesitation, I looked around. And there was all these countless other faces in the auction leaning forward eagerly, ready to give their souls to. And I saw who I was bidding against. And it still gives me goosebumps. And then I looked at the auctioneer, and it was like this cowled, sinister, like gleeful at the fact that we were all about ready to spend our souls. And I woke up the next day, and I started to think about the life that these pro pool players live. And I decided then and there that I wasn't going to be a pro pool player. And I put my cue down, and I didn't play again for 5 years. So, because I didn't know like what else I'd play. Once I decided I wasn't going to be the best in the world, like it didn't even occur to me to keep playing. It's like, well, if I'm not going to do that, what am I going to do? So I put my cue down, and I was like, I'm done. And then 5 years later, I went through a breakup, and I had a little extra time, and I was like, I used to play this game. And that was the first time in my life that I started playing again with a different goal, which is I can play. I know I'm not going to be the best in the world because I know what that costs, and I'm not going to do that. But maybe I can just play and have some fun. And after that, my goal was always, instead of saying, here's where I'm going to get, no matter what it costs, I said, no. Here's what I have to invest in terms of energy. Let's see what I can do with it.
Right.
And that's been my attitude ever since. And it's always been like, well, let's see what I can do with it. And, not bad.
So, but you said that at 17, after doing like the 12-hour days from 12 to 17, then you had a 5-year break somewhere in the middle. So now we're talking about you're somewhere between 23 and 25.
Yep.
And then instead of, I'm just going to make up some numbers, instead of 10 or 12 hours a day, are we talking 6 to 8?
So no, at this point now I'm playing kind of not recreationally, but like much more casually. Now at this point I'm playing much more casually. I had a job where I worked retail, so I worked weekdays, evenings, and Saturdays. So I never played a pool tournament because I worked Saturdays. I was off Sunday and then another day off during the week. So on Sundays, I'd go up to the pool hall and match up with people and play. And I'd hit some balls at home. I got a 9-foot table at home because I missed the game. And then, and so I did that for a few years. I actually never played a tournament from when I started playing again in '03 until late in '05 when my job changed. And so I was playing a little bit just recreationally. And then what changed my tournaments was that I actually switched jobs. And I got a job where I was off on weekends. And in 2005, I started playing tournaments. And at the time, there was a group of like 5 or 10 guys in Minnesota that were like top players. And I thought they were all better than me because I'm like, man, I don't know if someday maybe I could play with some of those guys or give them a run for their money. So I entered a tournament and I won it. It was the first tournament I won. It was the beginning of 2006. I still remember. And I went through the winner side and then this guy had to double dip me. And I still remember I beat him 9-8 the second set. I'm like, I beat them all.
Nice.
And then I went on this tear from '05 or '06 until like '08 where I just started dominating Minnesota pool tournaments. And I found out I guess I can play with them. And so then I started going to some pro events too, US Open, and they had the Seminole events around then, and some whatever else. Trying to think of what random, like, Derby and some other stuff. So yeah, that was kind of when I started playing tournaments.
So you mentioned professional events, so like, but you didn't want to go pro in regards to the whole selling your soul type of aspect. So would you say you're more of a semi-pro than like an official pro, or like where would you like categorize yourself?
That's more of a conversation about how you define pro in pool in general. Because if you go off of who makes a living at the game, then it comes down to, well, how good of a living. But ultimately, if you're going to say a pro is somebody that makes a living at the game, which is generally what we think of as pro, well then, hey Shane, if you're watching, right? but if you're talking about who plays at a professional level and competes in pro tournaments, that's what I kind of do. And so I consider myself a pro level player because I have a pretty good track record in the sense of, if I've played, I don't know, 80 matches against like name players, whether it's, whoever it is, anyone like 760 plus to 820, maybe I'm 40%. And, what I would say is I'm like real close to even money against those guys at like the 750 to 780 range. And then when you get the guys around 8 to 820 Fargo rate, yeah, probably more of a 4-1 underdog. And it's really hard to take sets off those guys. So anyway, but I'd say like I feel like I belong. I feel like I belong. So I'm not a professional in the sense of income, but I like to go play. So.
Okay. Well, I saw a story, or not a story, but a question here by G-Man. He wants to know if you can name the pool hall that was from the 12 to 17 year old, and like, does it have like old brunch? Like, what were the tables that you played on from 12 to 17? Yeah,
so I played. I was actually in Rochester, Minnesota. So I played at All Star Billiards, and it was anyway 41st and 18th Avenue. So whatever. So the tables were, I think they were from Florida, like Petersons or Robertsons or something like Robertsons or something. I don't remember, but they had pretty big pockets, and so they probably 4 3/4. I remember they were pretty big pockets, and then so a lot of things about my game changed when I started playing on tougher equipment. So, but I had nights where I really knew those tables, and so I lived at that pool hall, right? So I knew those tables really well. It would take a real top player to beat me on those tables, but then if I traveled and played on different equipment elsewhere, under pressure, out of my comfort zone, against other people that had a lot of confidence and experience and swagger for money and stuff, then I would play more like a shortstop. But then when I played on my home table, I was like a Venus flytrap. Anybody who wanted to come in and play me on my home table, they had a hard time.
Yeah. So, like, for the viewers here, you mentioned pro events, or professional events, we should say, that you entered in. Like, I guess, like, let's start with, like, who was the first known professional opponent that you came up against to who was the most well-known professional that you ever came up against, and what were the outcomes of those two types of matches? The
first pro that I played the 2005 US Open. This was right after I got the weekends off, before I ever even won a local tournament. And I remember I went out there, and I ended up on the loser side. I maybe won a match or two, and then ended up on the loser side. I must have won one, lost one, and then won one on the B side. And then I had to play Danny Basovich and Kid Delicious.
And
at the time, this is 2005. He was still playing. I mean, he had just won like the Glass City Open, and I'd seen him on ESPN a few times. So it's like, whatever. He was playing pretty good at the time. And I played him, and it's a race to 11. And I remember before the match, I called a friend of mine, and I told him I thought I was about a 20-1 underdog. I thought I was 5% to win race to 11 against this guy. Because, I mean, he's, I had no idea. And he started running me over, and he played really, really good. He got me down 5-0, and he's just playing so good. And I'm just like, well, what are you going to do? And then we kept playing, and I just kept hung in there, and I traded racks from 5-0 down. I got to where I was only down 10-7. So he's on the hill. I'm down 10-7, and then I sneak a game, and then at 10-8, I remember he played a safety on the 7 ball, and I remember making a curve shot, and we were kind of having fun. There was like a positive energy, and I looked at him. I said, Danny, I've only got one gear, and I got up and curved around the ball. I cut the 7 in with this sweeping like half masse, half whatever swerve shot. I cut the 7 in, went 2 rails for shape on the 8, ran out, broke and ran out to get to the hill. Now it's hill, and Scott Smith, the tournament director, comes over, and it's whatever, day 3, the grandstands aren't packed, but there's enough of an audience to make me nervous, and he's like, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to direct your attention, if you please, to table 16. We've got Demetrius Gelatis versus Danny Kid Delicious Basovich, Hill, losers bracket match, someone's going home. And he looks at me, and I'm just like, oh, God. So I get up, and I break dry. And Danny runs the table, and he runs up to the 8 ball, and he gets a little quirky, and he has to chip and play a safety. And he plays a safe and leaves it end rail to end rail on the 9-footer. And he just shot too good. There was no reasonable safe. I went all in on the length of the table bank. And I came with it. I made it. And then that little 9 ball on the side looked really hard. I cut the 9 in, and I won. And I'll never forget, I have this weird name, Demetrius Gelatis. They thought, nobody knows I might be good, right? So they come up and they were asking me to sign their little U.S. Open guides and stuff. And I'm like, and even Danny was happy for me because it was whatever. And so that was my first pro. Yeah.
That's awesome. Eric Lyons, you want to know what Demetrius' Fargo rating? So currently, up to date, it's sitting at a 732. And if anybody's wondering about mine is currently sitting at a 614. So if Demetrius is, what is that, 118 points higher than me, that's basically why I'm here, to hopefully learn some stuff so I can finally start to increase my Fargo rating. So there's the first pro that you ran into, and you ended up with the victory. Now, of today, I guess, what is the most notable pro that you've ever been up against, and what was the outcome of that match?
Well, I mean, I won in the finals against Shane in a regional tournament here. It's bar table 8 ball, so I discounted a little bit, but race to 8, bar table 8 ball. He had to beat me 2 sets. He beat me the first set, and then I turned in a flawless victory. And so, yeah, that was so. I mean, the fact that it was Shane, the fact that it was the finals, and the fact that he has beaten me 11 other times that we've played.
So it was finally your one time.
Listen, I've got a good track record against anyone whose name doesn't rhyme with Dan Boning. Okay, I'll put it that way. That guy has pwned me all over the Midwest and the country. So I was pleased one time.
That's awesome, especially when you have all those times where it's like here you lose, here you lose, here you lose, but all you need is just that one time. That's all right. You're really asking for. And then once you get that one time, then the sky's the limit.
Well, and we've talked about it too, that you don't measure players by their losses. You measure them by their wins.
Right.
And so if somebody wins a world championship, it doesn't matter how many times it took them, right? So.
G-Man wants to know, did you ever play the bar circuit?
The bar circuit. Well, there's been times, when I first started coming into my own, where I would run around, especially in the 2005 to 2010. I played a lot of regional stuff. And so, there was times when what I wanted to do was make money locally so I could buy shots at the pros, right? But, he said he beat Brandon. Anyway, I've got Brandon too. I played him in 2017. I got there. Okay, but ultimately, the bar tournaments, no, I really, for me, I like to go challenge myself. So long story short, I want to be playing against top players and challenge myself. And meanwhile, I don't really feel like going into small pool rooms and hustling or stealing. Meanwhile, I don't feel that I'm wanted in there because we got we got handicaps and we got Fargo caps, and we've got a lot of players that are we don't want to be stolen from. So if the attitude from the public was, hey, it's just an honor to have great players playing, and where else can we play for $50 and play against great players, if that was the attitude, which is kind of how it was in 05, 06, then I'd play. But when the attitude's like, what are you doing here? How come you're not playing with the pros? And we're going to cap the Fargo, and you got to give us a spot. It's like, okay, hey, no problem. I know where I'm not wanted. And so I've actually played in the last, well, this is COVID year, but even before that, I've been playing, probably one tournament in Minnesota the last 2 years. I basically checked out of Minnesota.
I feel like that's been kind of the trend, like ever since the Fargo was born, to where like now these tournaments are basically saying, well, if you're higher than this Fargo rating, then you're not really welcomed in our tournament, or even if they do welcome you in the tournament, like the handicap is just ridiculous.
Yes.
Like in your opinion, like, do you feel like that's necessary, even from a business perspective?
One thing I want to mention is he's asking if we're going to be playing pool tomorrow. Tomorrow night we are going to do a live stream challenge match. Tonight we're just hanging out with the crowd, so we're going to be chatting up.
Yeah, this what we're going to do here, like after I get done interviewing him, Demetrius has a segment on the Cue It Up podcast, if you've never seen it before, called The Coach's Corner, and that's where I'm literally just going to turn the stream over to him. So you guys, while we're talking, feel free to ask questions. We're going to answer the questions as they come in when we catch them. But when Demetrius has the floor, feel free to ask him whatever you want about pool, advice, or pretty much like how you do me when I just do my regular live streams. And then tune in tomorrow, because that's going to be the New Year's stream, where we are going to start the stream off with a challenge match and then hopefully be able to ring in the new year with everybody that does attend.
Yeah. So you asked me, is the handicapping necessary and all this?
Or limiting, top players.
So here was my experience, and I will explain my experience with the handicapping, because we were kind of talking about this yesterday. When I was playing in 06 to 09, that's when I was playing a lot of regional tournaments and winning. And what happened was, number one, I won money, and so I could go play the pros. And number two, I built a lot of confidence, because I just got to the point where I'm like, I have a skill edge. I'm transcending the field. I'm coming with it again and again under pressure. I started thinking of myself as a winner. And then in 2010 or so, our region changed and it went to all handicap stuff. And I started playing it for a while, and I started getting beat up. And there's a reason that handicapping is really, really difficult. By the way, here's the challenge for those of you that haven't heard this with handicapping. Suppose, Chris, that you and I played straight pool. And you're actually a bad example, because you're too solid. I need somebody that's like capable, like somebody that might wilt against a good player. Suppose I play a player who's a little bit lower, that's a little intimidated by me. So I don't know. We're having fun. Thanks for. So let's suppose that on paper, like truly, if we could just truly have them play their game and have me play my game. Say I need to give them 60 points to 100. Okay. So the handicap starts out where it starts off where I'm the favorite. I only have to give them 50 points to 100. But I get up there and I'm playing with aggression, and they're playing nervous. So I beat them. So then I go, and the next time I play, the handicap changes, and I have to give them 60 to 100. But now they're nervous, and I beat them before, and they start dogging it, and I beat them again. Now the handicap goes where I have to give them 70. Well, they're supposed to be the favorite now, but I beat them twice, and they just are so scared, and they find ways to only run 3 balls and all this stuff, and they just keep giving me so many chances. They play so below their game. I beat them again, and so on until I give them 80, and they still dog it to me. So I'll take it if they dog it.
Right.
But I need them to dog it now badly. And then it goes to 85. And something clicks in their head, and they're like, hey, you can't give me 85. All I got to do is make that ball.
Right.
And something clicks, and they stop being nervous, and whatever block was in their mind that was preventing them from seizing opportunities against me is just faded. And all of a sudden, they just get up and limp in the 15 balls and shake my hand. And so what happens, the reason it's so hard to handicap pool is because that intimidation factor is there until it isn't. And then when that breaks, that's worth more than the handicap. And it's just weird. And so what ended up happening is my handicap got insurmountable. And then people start beating me. And then once they lost that any kind of nerves, they're like, they no longer were like, I have to play him. I'm going to have to play perfect. How am I going to do this? They just got up there and said, you're not so tough. I got an 18-game head start. Let's go. And all of a sudden, I just started getting run over again and again. And I stopped thinking of myself as a champion. I started just feeling like, man, I just lose all the time, and everyone's picking on me. And there's these guys that play like this, and I just can't beat anybody. What am I doing wrong? And I started feeling really vulnerable. So then I heard some article about these people that were like cage fighting rats. They were like training rats to fight each other. And apparently they had this really, really big rat, and they tied its hands together. And they had it fight other rats, and it always lost because its hands were tied. And then they had this little rat that had it fight all these other rats that had their hands tied together. And this little rat always won. And the little rat was like, Superman. And the big rat was like, I guess I'm just this dumb rat. So then they untied the big rat's hands and had it fight the little rat, the undefeated little rat, against this, what's the opposite of undefeated? This guy had never won, this big rat that had never won. Well, this thing was twice his size. But he got up and the little rat ran him over. And they were doing this experiment talking about how confidence and previous experience means more than size. And I started thinking about that. I'm like, all I do is lose now. This isn't good for me. I'm not making money. I'm only losing. I'm not learning. It's not something where I'm like, what did I got to do different to win this match? It's like, what I got to do different is not give up a 5-game lead. So I'm out. So I quit playing them. Because for me, it was a net negative. So I understand from the, on the other side of things, which is like, you don't want to necessarily, I don't know. I mean, is it necessary? Now we're talking about tournament promoting and marketing and what people want. I mean, that's up to you guys if it's necessary. I don't know. I'm kind of checked out on anything but professional pool because thank God I don't want a handicap. I just want to go and have an equal chance. So if I go play pros, I don't care. I lose, but at least I get to pay my entry fee and play and have it fair. And then what all you guys decide you want to do, you guys can work that out. But that's kind of one of the reasons I stick to the pros is because I don't have to negotiate.
And that makes sense. I mean, I struggle to this day to try to host handicap style tournaments to the point to where a complete underdog that feels like they have no chance to having a chance. And when I actually tried to create some handicap tournaments, I actually flipped it to where now the underdog is a complete favorite, and then I start pulling it back to where it's like, wait a minute, like this isn't a participation award, like you're going to win just for participating. Like at some point in time, you have to work for this, because I do believe in the concept of if I'm currently not good enough, I'm going to put in the work to become good enough. And then that's when I'm actually going to...
And we talked about, the other day, we were talking about incentives and how you set stuff up. And there's a lot that goes into it. And in the end, guys, legitimately, pool is first and foremost about a bunch of people getting together, having fun, and competing. And so whatever's necessary to make that come together is what I want.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what I'm looking for.
I want to field a couple of these before we fall too far behind.
Yes,
I saw two. One was asking me about Q Sport. What's my favorite?
Yes, let's start with that. So Tristan, Demetrius, what is your favorite Q Sport and which is your least? So what's your favorite game and what's your least favorite game?
I love all the games. I mean, of course, I think 9-ball and 10-ball are always going to be at the heart. But then I say that, but then I love straight pool. And then I say that, and I kind of actually hate to admit it, it's a dirty secret. I kind of grew to like bar table 8-ball in some ways, even though I don't really play it anymore. And then I've grown to kind of love one pocket, and I don't play it very well, but I really love 3-cushion billiards because I get to hit some of those shots that I try to find excuses to hit them in a game, but it's like really. But then, so I really love all sports, but ultimately 10-ball, 9-ball and 10.
So rotation more than anything.
I love running the balls out in order. And then, in terms of technique, do I recommend emulating a snooker player and a pause and a backstroke? Should I have a pause and a backstroke? So, I'll tell you this. For those that don't know, and I'll keep this brief because I've gone on and on, I am not a fundamental, I don't believe that the road to great pool is becoming a cue testing robot where you just work on your fundamentals until you never miss. I believe that you have to be able to develop your skills to do what needs to be done on the table, but that the path forward involves strategy, not mechanical perfection. That being said, I do think the snooker players, it seems to be the trend is going towards that hybrid snooker stance where a lot of people are, the old-time players, their fundamentals were all over, but now we have a lot of people coming out of Europe that play like the Eurobots, I call them, right? And, Fedor and Filler and Gorse, I already said Gorse, but, Clenty Kachi and Elvin Ocean and all these guys, they all seem to kind of have that setup. So if that works for you, great. But I also know that players better than you and I will ever be played for many years with a little variety. So like Ralph Soke does not have a snooker stance. His body's turned where his toe is actually pointing across the shot line. He's more of a pool stance. It's fine. It's fine as long as you're comfortable. It's consistent. You can sight the ball and stroke freely. I think there's a lot. At the level, any level that probably any of us are looking to attain, I don't think it's worth wrecking your game and wrecking the fun in your game. Trying to find a stance like a robot. I don't quite think that's necessary. Maybe I'm in the minority, but okay.
Right,
and then a pause on the backswing.
Yeah.
Okay. Not required to have a pause. What I do think a lot of top players have is a smooth transition. So the difference between a pause and a smooth transition is one is back, 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 hold, forward. I mean, that's not necessary. When you toss a ball in the air, it doesn't pause at the top. If I toss this 8-ball, it doesn't pause. It just runs. It's always accelerating at the same speed, which means that it comes to a stop and then it starts moving forward. But it doesn't ricochet off something. It doesn't jerk. And so what I would say is like Jeanette Lee, and I actually use this analogy, and I heard her use it too. So I'm not the first to use this analogy. Like a swing set. When you come back on a swing set, it's like there's that moment where you're just kind of hanging, where you're like weightless. And I think that's why kids like swing sets. You get to feel like you're an astronaut. And I think so I've had a lot of players really mess up their rhythm trying to pause. But when I told them not to think of it as a pause, think of it as a hang, where you're back, hang, swing.
Right.
And they're like, I don't like doing nothing. I'm like, you're not doing nothing. You're hanging. You're back, hang, swing. So I kind of like that rhythm, but it doesn't. But I see a lot of top players that don't. But as long as it's smooth and not jerked forward, then it's okay.
Okay. So we got G-Man here. If a novice player plays every day and continues to improve and self-taught, could that person become a pro player?
No.
Why do you say that?
That's something I was going to rant on in the coach's corner.
Okay, we can save it for that.
Yep. There's certain things, and the reason I want to hint this, so I want to come back to G-Man. That's what I tried to do when I played 12 hours a day for 5 years as a kid. And so I put in, and I mean this, I put in 70 plus hours a week on the table, probably more, every week, including Christmas, Easter, New Year's, whatever. 365 days a year, I had a minimum of 10 hours in for 5 years. And didn't come close to the top level of pool, because I'll elaborate more, but what was missing was you can't get there in a vacuum. You need exposure to high level play.
Nice. We've got Mahmood Sankari, who is from Australia. Is it better to practice drills or just break and run?
Okay, so I think you need a pie chart. So it's like a balanced diet. Like I think they did away with the food pyramid.
Yes.
They don't do that anymore. But anyway, I'm going to stick with it. Pluto's a planet, and I have a food pyramid. So we have you need a lot of things in pool, right? You need competition. You need some wins. You need some losses. You need players that are better than you. You need players that are worse than you, so you can learn to win. You need players your speeds. You can grapple. You need games. Whatever. So when it comes to, I always think about it like, you want quality, you want quantity. I need a little bit of everything. If all you do is play drills, that's not going to work. You need to play games where you can then put those skills together and practice, putting them together with rhythm and in practice and not just in theory. And you need to be able to kind of blend them in game situations and then put yourself where you're in pressure and put yourself on different equipment and do different things. So if all you're doing is drills, it's probably not the optimal balance. But if all you're doing is running around shooting balls in the hole, then you're probably not developing and targeting the right skills. So think about like a fighter. If a fighter wanted to be a great champion, if all they did was spar, like, no, you need to be working out and targeting specific muscles. You need to be breaking the tape and training on certain things. But if all somebody did was break down tape and work out in the gym, like, no, you need to be fighting too. It's like you need all of it. So drills are an important piece, but not the entire puzzle.
Gotcha. That's a good answer. So to clarify, and we can either decide to answer this now or still save it for the coach's corner. The question was not to become a pro player, but under the conditions of plays every day, continue to improve, self-taught, could they compete with a pro player?
Well, so that means, could they enter a pro tournament? Yes. But, anybody can compete. You can go pay your entry fee. But if you want to be competitive in terms of if you're playing a reasonably length set in professional conditions, I'm not going to say that somebody that practices on their own can't upset a pro in a match. Because, again, if they played me, if you include me in pros, then I could turn in a set that's beatable by somebody that hulks out in their basement. But if what you're talking, could they cash
Right.
In the tournament. Like, it's really vague. So I would just say this: you're not going to be competitive at a pro level in the sense of, like, I'm barely competitive at the pro level, and if I hadn't, and before I had gone and compete. I mean, yeah. So I don't know if that answers the question a little bit.
I think that fairly answers. So it's like, it's fair to say, like, there's always going to still be that one moment where you compete with a pro player and beat them. But then are you truly asking to where, like, out of a recent, a decent sample size of 50 pro players, and you fall under the condition of playing every day self-taught, could you beat over half of them? Like, how would you answer that?
Yeah. No, and so this is, like, for example, one of the reasons the Filipino players are great is that the Philippines is a very small geographical area. So they all are in the same proximity. They get to play each other. They mentor each other. They spar with each other. One of the reasons the United States really struggles is we're so big that if I want to play somebody and spar with somebody, I have to drive to St. Louis and play Justin Bergman. That's an 8-hour drive. So it's like, it's really challenging. And so if you take an Efren and you put him on a table and given him the same number of years to play and told him, hey, Efren, just figure this game out. You can watch videos and read books. He would not have turned into Efren Reyes. That didn't happen in a bubble. Okay, you have to stand on the shoulders of giants, and I'll more on that later.
Okay. So Tristan wants to know, how many hours would you recommend an amateur or a good player to spend time on a pool table?
So yeah, what I've noticed is, of course, now you guys have heard my formula, which is how many hours do you have to comfortably invest without interfering with your, school, your work, your family relationships, whatever. Right? It's like, what do you have that you have to comfortably invest? It's like asking, how much should I save a month? It's like, well, it kind of depends on your budget, but within your budget, spend what you can. Now, what I will answer is, I think the question you want me to answer is, how many hours would an amateur player have to put in per week to really launch to a competitive amateur player? And I'd say that most competitive, let's just throw a Fargo rate out there, like guys that are in that, like, I don't know, 6 to 650 range, that are like maybe not the favorites to win every tournament they enter, but they're competitive enough to do it.
So that's me.
Yep. Yeah. so far he's going up. Okay. Plays good, man. Okay. So I would say that most players in that range had a period of their life where they probably played, 20, 30 hours a week for 3 to 5 years. So it was a big part of their life where they were playing, 3-4 nights a week, either playing every day a little bit, or playing 5 or 6 days a week a little bit, or playing, every weekend all day and then a little bit during the week, something like that for 3 to 5 years. And I'm going to go into this more because I actually have a formula that involves, time and opposition level and stuff. I kind of have a formula that talks about what is going to achieve different outputs. And I'll go into all that more later.
Okay, I have a question here that I want to answer, and then you also answer as well. Because we got Eli Jolly wants to know if there are any tips for a player who is strongly left-eye dominant. So I want to try my answer, and then
go ahead,
you can throw in your
please. I'm
interpretation.
going to grab a drink here. Hold on.
Because I'm a right-handed player that is left-eye dominant, and so the way I approach my shots is I do have my cue underneath my chin, so that both of my eyes are doing most of the processing of whatever it is I'm seeing. But because I am left-eye dominant, my left eye is doing the majority of the processing of, is the hit right, or do I feel that the hit is right? Do I feel that I'm aiming correctly? But since we have two eyes, you have to know that having both eyes is what allows you to accurately judge depth perception. That's where most of the aiming comes from. And so that's the only way I know how to answer it, to where even though the cue is down the center of my chin to where I'm looking at both eyes, but since I am left-eye dominant, my left eye does signal to my brain that I think the shot is right, or so on and so forth, and then I finally pull the trigger and then figure out if I'm right or wrong.
That makes a lot of sense. And I'm mostly, I think I'm left-eye dominant when it comes to pool. My cue is almost entirely under my left eye, and I am a right-handed player, and that has caused me some challenge. I don't. So my best friend is Josh Burble, and he subscribes to the belief of not thinking about this stuff. And he subscribes to the put it in the hole mentality. He aims at a contact point, sends the ball towards his hole. Anytime anybody talks about aiming systems, backhand English, dominant eyes, fundamental stance, any of this stuff, what he does is he excuses himself and leaves the room because he pockets balls really well, and he just looks at the contact point and sends it towards the hole. So I think that there's two schools in general on fundamentals. One is to learn everything you can analytically and meticulously build your game to try to fit a certain specification. But there's another, which is just kind of, if it works, do it. If it doesn't work, work on it until it does it, and then do that. And that's more the mentality I have. So when it comes to how I deal with eye dominance, I don't think about it, and then I don't shark myself, and I practice. Yeah, so that's not necessarily what people want to hear, but maybe it's good to hear because for those of you that want to really understand it and work on it, nothing wrong with that. But for those of you that are like, I don't know that I'm ever going to figure all this out. How am I going to figure all this out? How do I do it? I'm giving you permission to just not worry about it and shoot the balls in. And if that works better for you, then do that. Now, if it doesn't work for you to do what I'm saying, then break it down. But if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and then there's the two interpretations. Like I've broken it down to where I have identified that my left eye will be doing most of the processing, the majority of the processing of what I'm actually visioning, where my right eye is just helping me see how far away the object ball is, and then to add a little bit of fine tuning to my aiming. Tristan wants some clarification off of what you said about the hanging motion versus the pausing motion. So he wants to know that you're basically saying that we should have more of a fluid technique than a robotic technique.
So I think, and you can do the pause if you want, but I think here's the main point. What is the point of this hang or pause? It's there for a reason, which is to prevent a cue motion where you go from 0 to 60. And the problem with going from 0 to 60 is two things. One, you lose accuracy with the shot. And two, you don't actually get as much power because you're using more muscle, which you start with more power, but then you're decelerating because I use the bunting in baseball. If you take a baseball bat and try to push the baseball with a jab, you're never going to achieve the same amount of impact as if you swing and let the bat swing. So the problem with choking the cue and jamming it forward is, yeah, you're using all this muscle, but you're preventing it from swinging. So the whole point of this hang is to make sure that you start your swing slowly and that it picks up speed and your timing is such that it peaks when it hits the cue ball. And as long as you're doing that, that's what that whole relaxed swing. And I know a lot of pro players that don't pause or even really hang. They just back, forth. But as long as it's really calm, starts slow and accelerates through the ball, that's what that's about.
I don't know if this question was directed towards me or if it's directed towards both of us, but Selva Vasudevan, I think I pronounced that correctly, wants to know if you or me plan on setting up a Patreon account to impart ongoing online training. I can personally say no, I am not ever going to set up a Patreon account. All my training is pretty much free with what I do on my YouTube channel. I'm pretty sure I know what your answer is, but go ahead and share.
Yeah. So I have a small private Facebook group, so it's not public. It's only for my graduates of my boot camp. The reason why is I don't do online training. There's a reason why I don't, but I do have a group and something where I'm trying to start doing some online training for my graduates, and the reason is all about integration. I want Brian, the surfer guy, whatever number. I want him to make sure that the stuff that I train on, that it doesn't fade like a dream. I want to make sure he keeps hearing my voice in terms of like the key ideas I've taught, and keeps seeing the vision of how to put these pieces together the way I taught it. And I want to make sure that he continues to get exposure so that he becomes the player he wants and he gets everything that I can give him. So I am doing that for my graduates. What I'm not going to be doing is any type of online training to the public. I'm not traditional lessons guy. I'm not really looking to, people that want to fly and spend 3 days and get real serious and break down their game and go away as a different level player, that's what I want to work with. I'm not looking for people that are window shopping and kicking tires and kind of like, well, do you have anything to say over here? Nah, and I really appreciate it, but I'm crazy, and if you're crazy, then we're going to be a good fit. So.
I'm pretty sure I think I know what your answer is going to be to this question here, and anybody that has asked me this question myself should already know what my kind of answer is going to be. I always refer to him as TBZ, Tango Bravo Zulu. He
Cool.
wants to know that since he hasn't competed in a tournament, first high level tournament in 16 years after taking an 8-year break, and he feels like he's there, but he wants to know what's your advice on preparation. So I have to feel like this is more of a mental advice. Like, how do you mentally prepare for your first big tournament after a decent layoff?
Yeah, I prepare the same for any competition. Every competition has unique mental challenges, but what I do is I spend some time, and so this takes discipline. I'm going to challenge you on this because you asked a good question. So I'm going to give you a good answer, and I'll challenge you to email me and let me know if you do this. I'll be proud. Spend an hour with a pen and a notebook, go to a coffee shop or something, put away your phone, and write down everything that you can think of that will make you feel uncomfortable, nervous, any negative thoughts that will distract or derail you during competition. Try to anticipate them. So, and if you know you're going to do this, say you set up an hour to do this on, next Thursday on the 7th or whatever, if that's the 7th, then you'll be thinking about it all week. Maybe you'll brainstorm a couple things. Then when you sit down for that hour, you write out all these things that are going to derail you. And then, so for example, if you haven't played for a while, you might feel, oh my gosh, I haven't felt this kind of pressure. I thought I was better prepared. What am I up against? Or do I have what it takes to win this match? Or, whatever distracting, those are bad examples, but whatever distracting thoughts you might be up against. Think about, why would you be scared? Why would you be nervous? What situations might arise? And then look at it and spend some time and say, okay, and so work through how you want to handle that. Visualize yourself in that spot, and then think about how. So I got to show them one thing, Chris. I'm sorry.
Sure.
In the end, I break it down to flashcards, and what I do is on the front of the flashcards. It's no different than preparing for a job interview, where you think about the questions you might be asked, and then you kind of have bullet points of some of the things you might answer. So if they say, tell me about yourself, or if they say, have you ever had experience leading through change, or whatever they ask you, how have you enhanced an environment of inclusion and diversity on your team? Whatever questions you get asked, you got to have an answer. So you write down the questions you might be asked, and then you kind of prepare some ideas of how you might respond. Pool's no different. You think about the situations you might be in, and then you think about some ways you might respond. Now, in general, my response, I'm a process guy. So whenever, in a short, pressure comes from result-oriented thinking. Peace of mind comes from process-oriented focus. So a lot of times, if you focus on process, you're fine. When you get derailed, that's when you start thinking about results, and if you're going to win, if you're going to make this ball, if you're going to dog it. So you're going to be derailed by different thoughts, and then you have to find ways to let those thoughts go and refocus on your process. And so that's really general advice. So then by anticipating specifically what kinds of thoughts are going to derail you, you can then, for example, I have a line that I've boiled it all down to career, not game. So when I'm in a match and I start getting result oriented, I'm thinking, man, I'm on the hill. If I could just find a way to make this ball, then I win this match, and that would be awesome. And I stop myself. I'm like, hey, if I start playing scared, where I just want to get out of the frying pan and make this ball and be safe and have this win against so-and-so, that's great. That's what I want now. But if I get nervous and start playing scared and hoping that he misses and he dogs it to me so I don't have to play my best and I just want it over, that mindset, that's not going to take me to where, what am I going to do when I draw, Lee Van Corteza? Am I just going to sit around and hope he dogs it to me? It doesn't scale. It doesn't lead me where I want to go. So whenever I start getting scared and nervous and whiny and wimpy and I just want to win, I tell myself, which do I want? Do I want to win this game or do I want a career? And that question helps me remember I let go of the game. Right. I say, I don't, and then I go, and then I say, and that helps me square off, and then I go back to my process. Take a deep breath, put a good swing on it, and enjoy the adversity, the challenge. So that's how so anyway, to answer the question about mental preparation, focus on process, let go of results, but then understand that's not so easy to do. So brainstorm all the ways you can get derailed that you anticipate, and plan on having a way to remind, let that go, and visualize. So then I go around with these flashcards and I practice and I draw flashcards and I visualize myself in that situation, having to let go of those fears. And that's how I prepare for tournaments. Sorry, that was a long answer, but.
It was a good answer. I want to hear your answer to this question. It's a snooker question, but I think the game of snooker is irrelevant to the actual question. We're just talking about long shots, right? Mm-hmm. So on a snooker table, a long shot could roughly be over 12 feet long, but let's just make it a 9-foot diamond where it's a 9-foot shot, basically. What's the way of just getting better at it? And I'm going to preface this. Can you answer it without just saying practice?
Okay. You pulled my things. Okay. I mean, can I answer it by saying get closer to the ball? No. Okay, long shots are difficult. So the goal is not to make them easy because long shots are difficult. So you have to have realistic goals. Your goal can't be to practice until they're easy or to make them all the time. You have to be realistic. Can you make them slightly more often than you made them yesterday? That's probably a good goal. And so one bit of advice I'd have is I used to caution people on practicing long, off-angled shots. The problem being, if you miss, did you not aim correctly or did you not deliver your stroke correctly? So I used to practice long, straight shots, and I used to practice short, awkward cut angle shots. And that way, the ones where I'm close to the ball, cutting it at awkward angles, I know if I miss, it's because I didn't aim it right. Because I know I deliver my cue ball to 2 feet. And then on those long straight shots, if I miss, I know it's because my cueing's not right, because I know I aimed it right. Now, so I kind of like breaking it down and doing a little of each. But if you're going to practice long shots, which I do a little bit, then let's see, do I have any advice to improve make percentage? They're hard. I mean, I don't know. I missed too. It's a very difficult game. So I think all you can do is try your best to get a little bit better by a little bit better. And then, play better shape, have good realistic expectations when you do get back into a corner where you do have a tough shot. Just, you can't set your expectation impossibly high because all that's going to lead to is frustration, pounding your head against the wall, psyching yourself out, telling yourself, what's wrong with me where I can't make this all the time? And then you start thinking to yourself like there's something wrong and you lose confidence. You might as well just say, hey, this is a long, hard shot. Don't expect to make it. Let's give it a chance. And I suppose attitude towards realistic expectations. That's probably the best answer.
I like that. So Eli Jolly, as far as offering a boot camp this summer, let's just save that for the coach's corner because that's when he's going to have plenty of time to do any plugs that he's going to want to do for the boot camp that we offer here. So we are going to answer that question. It's just not at the moment. I do want to know though that we have one of your previous graduates. Surf Topic wants to know about your just adding chicken story.
Well, okay, so this goes to the pause at the end of the backswing. Yeah, story on just adding chicken. Okay, I appreciate that. I'm glad that helped. One thing that I've noticed that I struggled with and most people struggle with is when they're shooting firm, when they're shooting with any kind of power, that's when they tend to jerk their cue forward the most. That's when they lose accuracy. That's when they lose their timing and they muscle the ball. And so what I've done, I was a sales guy, so I used to read sales books. There was a story. Here's the story: is this guy goes to a cafeteria and there's 4 checkout lines, and 3 of them have like 2 people, and this one line has like 8 people, 7 people, and the guy he's like, why is this line 4 times longer? So he gets curious. He's like, I got time. So he waits through that line. And 10 minutes later, he gets up to the front, and he's checking out with this, nice lady with the hairnet. He says, I got to ask you a question. I couldn't help but notice your line was really long. I'm like, do you know why that is? She said, oh, yeah. She says, see this scale? She said, everybody, we have to serve everyone 6 ounces of lunch meat. Everyone else takes a big scoop of lunch meat, and then they take off until they get down to 6 ounces. Me, I put a smaller scoop of meat, put it on a scale, and I add to it until it gets to be 6 ounces. and it's true. And so the point, of course, is a sales story. So the point is about under promise, over deliver. The point about is perception is reality. I guess that's the bigger point. Is perception is reality. It's not the same amount, but I told this to Brian. I've told this before. Is like when I go to like a Leanne Chin's or Chipotle and they're making my burrito, they put this big scoop of meat out there, and then they start taking off. I do like the wolf in me wakes up. I'm like, that's my chicken. Like, what are you doing with my chicken? But when they put a little chintzy amount on there, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, man. And then they go back and they add a little bit more. I'm like, you're hooking me up. So that's the story. And what that relevance is was with the pool stroke. Another thing somebody really enjoyed me saying this is every shot is born a soft shot. And the biggest way that my accuracy on hard shots, like in terms of pocket or speed, sometimes you get flat on the ball and you have to jam the cue ball and really force the cue ball. My accuracy on those shots went up. When I started, on every firm shot, I start my swing, and the first 2 or 3 inches of my swing, I actually pretend that I'm going to roll. And not only pretend, I visualize the shot soft. Because what happens, so I'm going to give you a very specific example. You've got a shot, you're shooting it down the side rail, and you've got a really flat angle, and you need to jam the cue ball to get it to the middle of the table. But all you can do when you start thinking about hard, your muscles start tensing, and all that happens is you can just imagine that ball rattling. It's going to just jar. All you can do is picture that pocket spinning that ball up. So I trick my brain. I get down, and I warm up, and I picture rolling it in at pocket speed where the ball rolls up and just barely topples over. That's how I visualize my shot. And then I start my swing as if I'm going to shoot it that way, and then I change my mind. And I'm serious. This is what works for me. I add chicken. I always am adding chicken. And by getting down, every shot's born a soft shot. I get down, start, pretend I'm rolling it, and then once I get my cue going, like I'm going to roll it, then I just swing the hell through it, and boom! My accuracy on hard shots, but in terms of speed, light years different.
Fair enough. Let's see here. From Tristan Plays, he wants to know if there's any recommendations about the right tip size for different cue sports, such as English pool, snooker, carom, and American pool. Is there a one-size-fit-all, or is there an appropriate size for each game? Or?
Stay within the middle of the bell curve. You don't want to be the guy with like the 10.2 millimeter, like, the thing, but and you don't want to be playing with some like slip-on tip that looks like it came out of anyway. So just play with something. My advice would be, get something kind of production standard. I mean, 12.9, 12.4, 11.5. Play with something that's kind of mainstream. You don't want to be the Lone Ranger.
That's fair.
If you stay in the middle of the herd, you don't get picked off by the wildebeest or not the wildebeest, the hyena.
Let's see. Any tips on improving your back arm alignment if it is not aligned properly with the shot?
No. Nope. Okay, so let me explain something. My focus is more. It's not fundamentally based, and it's not like, okay. So I'm a pool trainer, but I'm kind of not traditional because I don't minimize the stuff that people like Chris. I've seen his content, and I've had a chance to benefit from his content and his one-on-one instruction. And I'm siphoning off him as well. So it's not that I look down on that. It's not that I look down on the importance of fundamentals or building a game or developing a core base of knowledge. And of course, you got to start there. But it would be like, that's just not what I teach, and that's not what I'm into. What I'm into is I do mental game, I do strategy, I do cue ball patterns, and building and game planning as far as putting together a practice schedule and putting together the right types of things to work on with the right vision and the right pieces in the right way, and kind of developing a roadmap for your practice time, but also for your competitive, how you're going to manage your career. Like, how do we get you from here to where you want to be, on the table, in your head, off the table, in your career? Like, just and then identifying the pieces that are underdeveloped, working on those together, showing you how they come together. That's what I do, and I don't really care how which way your wrist is cocked. So
okay, so I want to attempt to answer this next question here, and then get your interpretation as well, and then we're going to pause on some questions because I have an interview question for like story time, basically. So we have Tan May here. He wants to know how to get rid of the subconscious blockages when you play against some specific person against whom you lose all the time. So like, I've answered a question like this before. to where it already boils down to fear, and the fear is the most important thing that's probably going to stop you from performing well. And I've structured my answer to be this: if you can remove the fear as much as possible, because I don't think you're going to ever fully remove it, because then you become the winner. I think like when that actually happens. But if you can reduce the fear as much as possible, and to be able to know that you still played the game to the best of your ability. Because if the fear overwhelms you, you're not going to play your best absolute game. You're just going to lose and just chalk it up to, well, I was scared by my opponent. But if you can actually say to yourself, okay, I know I was afraid, but I still played my best and still lost, I think that's something that you should be okay with, because then you can pinpoint, or hopefully try to pinpoint, things that caused your game, or caused the match, not your game, caused the match to fall apart and fall out to being your loss. And those are the things that you take home to start working on to see if you can eventually not instantly turn around to a win, but if it's a race to 7 and you lost 7-3 or 7-2, but you go back and you took your notes, and now you're coming back and you're only losing 7-4 or 7-5, and then you're taking more notes, and then eventually it starts to tip back into your favor. And now you're winning 7-6. Now you're winning 7-5, and then you're slowly but surely like just chiseling away at the roadblock in order to finally say, okay, I'm now over the subconscious blockage that I have over this one individual.
And what he just said is very parallel. When he was talking about focusing more on how you play and how you do, as opposed to short-term results, that's exactly what I was saying earlier about process versus results. If you focus on the process, you will achieve the results. Maybe not today, but at some point. Whereas if you focus on results, the problem is process is something you can control. Results are something you can't control. So focus on the process, and then you're going to feel much more confident, because those you can control your breathing and your strategy, your decision making, your effort. The only other thing I want to say is, for those that are interested, I have a YouTube channel with some Coaches Corners clipped, and I have one that talks about how to approach mental adversity. This is something that I have things to say on, and I'm open to. So anybody that was interested, check it out. I have part 1 and part 2, and there's more I could say, but I had to be concise in these clips. So how do I approach mental adversity? And so the idea, one thing I would say about a mental block: if you look at a mental block against a player, somebody that's beat you a bunch of times, I predict that you have a suboptimal attitude towards it. I predict you're like, why do every time I play this, I play good against other people, but then when I play this one guy, it just scares me, and I don't understand it. It makes me feel helpless or angry or so mad or whatever. It's like, look, you got to look at mental adversity as part of the game. And so instead of being mad about that and feeling like I shouldn't feel this way, yes, you should. Part of competitive pool is when you get beat by somebody, it sharks you. So instead of thinking that something's wrong with you, or being outraged or frustrated that you're facing that, welcome it into the game and say, I'm in a spot where he's beat me. And that makes it tough for anybody who's been in that spot. Like I told that rat story. Think about how the big rat felt. So once you just accept that as part of the game, then your attitude is already better, which is you should be facing that. Instead of like, what's wrong with this? How come there's something wrong with me? There's something wrong. I shouldn't have to be dealing with this. Yes, you should. It's totally natural. Do your best and have fun facing that adversity. Just the attitude towards it is a big first step.
Okay, so we already heard you say earlier that you beat Shane Van Boning in a 8-ball bar box tournament, which you openly admit that you don't really consider that to be like a gracious victory because it's a bar box. But what would you say has been, or either your first or your most gracious victory that you've had? And that's even if you scored high in gambling, or was it just a prestigious tournament that you won, or even a prestigious victory that wasn't even the victory of a tournament. It was just it's the win, like the win that you always have and will always remember.
It's strange because I have many, many, many memories of either playing pretty well, really well, doing some amazing things on the table, winning some amazing matches, beating amazing players. I've lived, my cup has run up over, and I've had a lot of really good memories. And so I could probably, if I had to pick 10 or 20, I could probably come up with a lot. I mean, beating Shane in the bar table is one. The best player in Minnesota for many, many years was Jimmy Wedge. He was ranked as high as 5th in the world. And he had this challenge match. I'll go with this one. This was kind of meaningful. He had a challenge match where he would play all the best players in Minnesota 2 out of 3 races to 7. Big table 10 ball, this gaffy triple shim diamond. And whoever scored the best against him out of those 6 matches, even if he beat everybody 2-0, whoever scored the best against him would get to come back and play in the finals. And then he would play where they had a free roll of $500. And they had to beat him 2 out of 3 sets, though, that time. So he played the other 5 players in Minnesota. He beat everyone 2-0. Only one other guy won 1 set. He lost 2-1. I actually beat him 2 out of 3 sets to get to the finals. And then I got to the finals, and it went 1 set apiece. And I want to say it was 2-1 him. I got a shot, and I beat him 8-2. I don't think he shot again.
Oh gosh!
I think he
really?
pushed. I think I had to push out the safety, but it was basically like 3 racks and 4 racks, and triple ship 10 ball. So anyway, to beat him in the hill. So I beat him 2 out of 3 sets twice. I scooped. I got the little $500 check. It meant something to me. So that's one. I mean, like I said, is it that big of a deal? No, but it was meaningful to me because, yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's most important. Someone else can look at that story and say, well, it was only $500, and it doesn't mean that much to them, but it's something that means to you, because I've got a very similar story where the most money that I've ever won in a tournament was $800, and it's, to this day, it's still my biggest score ever, and this is a tournament that I played in for like over a year or two, going 2 and out, over and over and over and over, and then finally starting to climb the ladder to where like I win a match here and there, and then finally one particular month I go undefeated and win the whole thing. So like, I completely understand where you're coming from.
What about when you flew out and played some guy in a challenge match stream that was like 100 points higher rated than you and beat him publicly in front of his audience? Oh wait, that hasn't happened yet.
That hasn't happened yet.
Okay. Tune in tomorrow, guys. Whew.
Oh man. So let's see. We got a question here.
Oh yes, I am Tin Man. I want to feel this one. I'm Tin Man. And the way I got that nickname was I was in retail and back when I was 20 years old when I started working after I quit pool. And anyway, they'd always page me. Demetrius, please come to the desk. You have a guest waiting. And somebody came looking for me. Day after day, they paged the same way, and it got so boring. So finally, I had them change it up. And one of the things that they'd say was a code, but they'd get on the microphone. So somebody would come in and say, is Demetrius available? And they'd get on the mic and they'd say, Tin Man rides the blue bus to Funky Town. And then I'd come up and be like, you called? So anyway, so it's actually, now I like to think about it like, I'm Tin Man, I don't have any heart, but it's actually from that. So.
Nice. Okay. Let's see. Where did it go? Courier 9 Ball. I saw your question earlier, and so this looks like a repeat when he's asking, how do you deal with the fallout period? And if it's relation to the last question is, when you take a long break, like, does a long break affect the game? I think the short answer is yes, but maybe you can just break it down a little bit farther.
Right. So this is kind of about, it's one of those things where it's like, what, is there a problem? Okay, so 2 answers. One, expectations, right? I mean, if you look at it like your joy from pool comes from playing at a certain level and that missing is bad and playing a little patchy is terrible and unacceptable and I can only, everything's terrible unless I'm playing really, really technically correct at all times. Well, then it's bad, I guess, to take a layoff. But if you take a layoff, just understand that you're going to hit a few rough shots, and there's going to be a few things that you have to kind of like make a few mistakes a couple times again, to remember those mistakes and kind of, just shake off a little rust. And I mean, honestly, but so I would say the first thing is, again, have realistic expectations, find joy in the game regardless of how the outcome. When you play, to have fun. You win as soon as you put your cue stick together. And if you just do that, then there's no impact to the joy you can have in this game after a layoff. Now, how much technically is there going to be a drop-off? Not much. I think a lot of this is in people's heads. So people that tell themselves you have to be hitting a million balls, and if you take time off the game and all this stuff, there's been plenty of players that have proven that you can take a layoff, come up, put in a couple of 8-hour sessions, be ready to go. I mean, it's just not, but I've had a lot of people that can't do that because they've told themselves, I know a person who every time he gets busy at work, it has a week where he hasn't played. He always says it's like, I hadn't played in a week and blah, blah, blah. I'm like that's like, that would be like if I said to you guys, so here's the situation. I was at this tournament and then I played a match and I won. I was playing really good. And then I went and had dinner and then they called my match. I'm like, I mean, I haven't played a match for like half an hour. Like, I mean, I don't even know if I can still play anymore. Like, seriously, like a week? You're going to tell me like you're talking about it like you've had a layoff. You've been off for a week. It's so much of it is in people's heads. And I'm just like, no, you might look, just to make the assumption that you can put in 2 6-hour sessions and then be 95%. Then, so within 2 days, you're back up almost at your speed. And then over the next week or two, there's going to be a couple, 1 or 2 shots a session that, you know, okay, yeah, that's how you hit that one. You're fine.
So I like this question because I have a short answer, and then I'll let you do the long answer. It's from Tan May. It says, how many shots ahead should we think if you're already good at potting? My short answer is, well, being good at potting is not the same thing as being good at potting a ball and getting position on the next ball. So I would kind of want to rephrase your question to say that into regards to being able to answer how many balls you would have to think ahead. But let's make the question a little bit more specific, and we'll just say 9 ball. So we know that there's at least going to be 8 balls that you have to possibly plan ahead for if you do a complete run out. Is the answer you should think of all 8, or should it be chunks of it at a time, or like what's the most optimal strategy that you think of in your opinion?
I would say, well, first of all, it depends on your skill level, right? So, I mean, if it's the first time you've ever played pool, probably should just be trying to make your ball. As you play longer, it's like chess. How many moves? It depends. But how many shots do professionals look ahead? That's kind of a two-pronged answer. One is they don't spend a lot of time agonizing and thinking in general because they develop the skills that they feel confident that they can handle things as they come. So as long as they can make their ball, get on the next ball, and that they have an angle to get on the next ball to where they can get on the ball. So you hear that, right? Play 2 balls ahead, look 3 balls. But that being said, I'm a big believer in also scanning ahead to try to get an anticipation of what the problems may be later on in the rack. And the reason that's really important is say you've got a good shot on the 1, and the 2 ball's hanging, and the 3 sitting in front of the side. So those 3 shots are easy, and you just start shooting. But suppose that the 7 ball doesn't go past the 8, and there's not really a good combo because the 7's frozen on the side rail and the 8's not frozen, and it would be a really tough combo. Well, if you don't look ahead, then what if you could have shot the 1 and broke that cluster open right now, and well, you have a bunch of safety valves. So I think it pays to scan ahead through the whole rack. So you don't want to agonize about everything, because if you start agonizing about 8 balls every time you shoot, that's probably not necessary. But I think it's a good idea to first establish, do you have a shot? Can you get on the next ball with a good angle? And then scan ahead to see if there's any spots coming up in the future. And if so, if either have a plan to deal with them, because either you can change the layout of the table strategically, or just know that you have a plan so that you're not feeling like, sometimes like if the 7-8 is really tied up, you might feel like, oh man, it doesn't even matter if I make this ball or not, because I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. So at least scan ahead for trouble. In short, I look at the whole table.
I think the same person asked an interesting question. It says, no offense to anybody, but I really think pool is super addictive. Any tips to stop when you feel like you can't? I feel like my first answer is, well, let's just not call it pool. Let's just call it addiction. And addiction is dangerous. And the way I define addiction is anything that you're so into that it actually affects the positivity of your life. And I mean, sometimes that actually calls for an intervention where hopefully some people notice that you have a problem. I
can stop anytime I want, Chris.
You would think so, right? That's kind of the whole point. But you know, the simplest, and it's easier said than done, answer is, you can't fix a problem until you identify it. So if you're able to at least identify that you're super addictive to pool, then you should be able to identify a simple solution, which is to try to back off how much you play at it. Like, is that something you'd agree with?
Well, I think that when it comes to compulsive behavior, you have to ask yourself, why are you doing it? No, people don't do something for no reason. So if you're obsessing about pool, it's usually one of 2 things. Either you're getting something from it, or you're escaping from something else. And so if you're playing pool because it's the only place you don't feel socially anxious or overwhelmed by life or depressed or lonely or whatever, then then we have to look at the issue isn't pool. That's just an escape. What's the issue in the life that you're trying to escape from, and how can we make it so that that's better? If it's something you're actually getting from pool, then it's like, what am I getting from this? And if it's the rush of being in action, or if it's the central, feeling central or important, and I get to be on a live stream with little Chris and look at me, it's like, if you're getting something out of it that's making you want like more, then you have to figure out, is this a healthy need? If not, what can I do to, be more balanced or meet this need through other appropriate measures? So it just depends on why you're obsessive. Now, I don't know if that's super serious, because I don't really know anybody that's ever been off the handle with pool, but I do know people that have gotten into it with action and kind of gone off the rails with action matches and getting into the pool and being kind of in the central and being a gambler and stuff, and so I guess just it's very dependent, but it's usually not the addiction. It's usually the underlying factors. So
okay. Let's see. Would you ever recommend a pool player to transition over to English pool without any difficulty?
When they say English pool, are they talking about snooker, or are they talking about side spin?
Well, English pool, I think, is just another game that they play over in the UK. It's similar to 8-ball, but with some, it has some variant rules that I currently don't know all of it about. Because I mean, the simplest answer is going to be, let me just restate your question. And instead of saying English pool, I'm going to say snooker. Instead of saying snooker, I'm going to say one pocket. Instead of saying one pocket, I'm going to say 9-ball. I'm going to pick any game that I want and just insert it into your question. How would you answer that? Just like from any pool game that you could think of.
If you want to take on the challenge, you have people to play against that also want to take on that challenge. You want, why not? I mean, but I don't know that I would recommend it. Okay, I'm not going to recommend it like, all the champions cut their teeth playing, snooker, so let's go. You should really go get a snooker. It's like, no, I mean, you don't need it. It's not like some big career development requirement. But if you want to, you can. So I wouldn't recommend it, but I wouldn't not recommend it. Play what you want to play.
And that's pretty much how I would lean towards it on that one here. Let's see here. Let's scroll back a little bit and check some other questions, because we've pretty much caught up. I like this one. If you don't have access to a table due to COVID, what are some good ways to keep your game sharp?
Yeah, you got to watch a lot of pool. Watching top players is it's not going to get you there, just like practice alone won't get you there. But in the absence of a pool table, I don't know anything better than watching top pool players and maybe reading books on mental game. I think there might be some pool going down tomorrow night. Okay,
I think you could be right about
that.
All right. We're gonna beat that dead horse. Okay, so let's see here. It looks like we at least caught up on some questions. If anybody's in the chat and we've missed your question, please go ahead and retype it, and we'll try to catch it again instead of being able to scroll back and forth. So, Demetrius, let me ask you, what would you say is your most crushing defeat that you've ever experienced?
Boy, I've got many.
So the top one. What's the top one?
Crushing. So like emotionally. Okay. When I was 16, I played this guy. Oh, I know. Here's the stories. I forgot about this. I went to this tournament out of town. I didn't even have a car or driver's license. So somehow I rode with somebody to a tournament at this pool hall in another city, and I played in this open tournament. It was race to 3 8-ball, bar table 8-ball. I didn't even play bar tables because I couldn't go into a bar, and my pool room didn't have 7-foot table. So all I ever did was play 9-foot. Literally, probably played twice in my life on a bar table. I go to this tournament, it's race to 3 8-ball. I'm 16 years old, and the owner says to me, "Hey, in a month we have a BC tournament. You should come back and play our BC tournament." And he hands me the flyer, and I said, "Okay, thanks, I will." I didn't even hardly know what BC meant. Well, anyway, I played him in the tournament. I ended up playing the owner. And it was alternate the break, and I ran out, he broke dry, I ran out again. So I beat him 3-0. I don't know, the ball is bar table 8-ball, so I didn't think anything of it. So then, a month later, I got the day off work, found somebody to take me to this tournament because I didn't have a car. And so he's like, "Oh, cool, I get to watch the pool." We went out there together. It's like an hour drive. I got the day off. I get there, and he's like, "You can't play in this thing. You play too good." I'm like heartbroken, right? So I'm like, what am I going to do now? So there's this guy there, this grifty hustler kind of guy, and he says that he's going to play me. He'll play me, and we played a race to 3 sets, races to 5, and he gave me 1 game to 5. So we played the best of 5 sets, and I had him down 2 sets to 0, and he came back and beat me 3 sets in a row with a 5-4 final win. And we were playing for a little money. And when I was 16, a little money, meant a lot to me. And that loss, something about the way that day came out, not being able to play the tournament, being there with my buddy watching, and then having this guy come back on me. And at the time, I was just devastated because I was 16. I didn't like to lose. And then a year later, he came into my pool room, and I Venus fly-trapped him. I played him even up, no handicap, races to 9. And we were betting roughly 4 or 5 times as much, and I beat him 2 sets in a row. I won 10 times as much as he won for me a year later, even up, and I blew him like 9-2, 9-3. And then he asked me for a spot, and I didn't give it to him because I wanted that so bad. I didn't want to risk letting him wriggle off the hook, and everybody else told me I could have won many, many, many more where that came from, but I just wanted that win. So anyway, that was my most devastating loss, because then what happened is I got mature, and now when I lose, I laugh. So that's really, I have to go back to like being a teenager and losing a few bucks. And like, since then, I just enjoy. I told you a story about my most epic meltdown against Johnny Archer, and I laugh because it's just a happy memory. I love choking.
Tell the viewers that same story. I'm sure they'd be interested in the meltdown against Johnny Archer.
U.S. Open, my deepest run. I made the final 16 undefeated. I was on the B side then playing Johnny Archer, and it was day 5, so the grandstands are packed. And he had just been indoctrinated into the Hall of Fame the night before, and he was still playing really, really good pool. It was 2009. And I was down 6-2, going to 11. Caught up to where I was only down 7-6. 3 fouled them to get to 7-7. So now it's a 7-7, race to 4. I've just won 5 out of 6 games. And we had the safety battle on an 8-ball. And he left me end rail to end rail on the 8-ball. Kind of like the one I made on Danny Vasevich. Very similar. And I remember thinking, I've waited all my life for this. When I was 14, I used to practice this shot, dreaming that someday I would play Johnny Archer and that I would be at the U.S. Open. And now, here I am. Unbelievable. And I'm like, I've been waiting my whole life for this shot and everything. I saw the edge of the ball. Everything was perfect. I'm like, yes, this is great. I got down. I'm like, boom, I've been waiting my whole life. I shot that ball like it had eyes. I linked to the table, banked that in. It never made a shot that felt any better than that. And then I looked at the 9, which was sitting about 6 inches from the pocket. And I mean, I had a little distance with the cue ball, but like, it's like the pot. All I could see is I was looking at the contact point, and I'm undercutting it, I'm undercutting it, I'm undercutting it, I'm overcutting it. Undercutting it, overcutting it, almost at the same point of the ball. And I'm like, the pocket just disappeared on me. And I got down and shook that thing. Everybody on it, oh! And then I got beat 11-7. I never won another game, and I just got roasted. So that was epic. It was awesome. That's a great meltdown.
You know what? I want you to answer this question here because we're currently having this discussion here. If Tristan wants to know that if he cannot pop the cue ball on the break, would you recommend to shoot with the same break style but change my speed, or should I try a break with a different type of break?
So I would say maybe try, if you use a jump cue. Okay, I'm sorry. So I am learning. Okay, Chris is educating me. So right now I'm in a transitional stage right now with my break, because if you had asked me this question earlier today, I'd say, the break shot, it's only a few variables. It's a square hit, and then it's a nice accelerating swing, and then just a good tip accuracy with the right, which is maybe just a hair of elevation. Like you put all that together, and that's going to result in a pop. So one of those ingredients is missing, and if that's what you're looking for. Now, in general, I think what people do wrong on the break, like we talked about the swing sad or the hang and the swing and adding chicken, I think people jerk their cue on their break. They're trying to hit it hard, and then they go off the track. They lose power and timing and accuracy. But the other question is it beneficial and necessary to have a cue ball that leaps off the table? and what Chris has been teaching me. So I've kind of thought that was like a requisite or a symptom of a good break, or like a good, like that's always present, is some kind of correlation. But Chris has been showing me some really effective 10-ball breaking with a flat cue ball that does not jump off the table at all. And it's very intriguing. And so far, I've only had him hit like 3 breaks, but he pocketed the same balls in the same pockets on all 3 10-ball breaks. And so I'm like, at some point, and it's not soft breaking either. He's hitting it hard, but he's hitting it firm and square and level and getting great results. So I'm on the fence. I'm still on the fence because most pros do have a cue ball pop. And so, and the people that I know that have the best break, like Tyler Steyer, Shane Van Boning, they break that way. And these are people that have over races to 100 under pressure against world-class competition. They're averaging a 40% break and run. They're averaging 1.7 balls per break. And that's how they're breaking, is firm with a pop. So in my mind, like that was the gold standard. But Chris and we might do a little bit more work here, and he might, if he can show me a way to break the balls, 100 times and give himself legitimate at-bats to run out, 60 of them, then I'm open-minded.
So I'm going to answer this question,
Thank
and then
you,
I can let you answer after me. Bang Time Pull wants to know would you recommend playing league, gambling, or tournaments, or any combination to improve as a 600 plus Fargo rating? So my short answer is going to be it can be any combination, or it can be none of the above, because I truly think that regardless of what you're doing when you're playing, it all comes down to focusing on what you're supposed to be learning. Now, some people can say, well, I can't learn unless I have some sort of pressure, and that's where the leagues, the gambling, like the financial pressure is going to come into play. But, when you have your own table at home, there's really no pressure unless of course you're inviting people in. But if you're working on something and for some reason you're not figuring out what you're doing wrong, then that's of course is stopping you from learning. So when you're playing the ghost, or you're just playing patterns, or you're just doing, or whatever it is you're working on, as long as you're figuring out where you're falling short, that's where the improvement's going to come in. However, you said it earlier, once I figure something out here, like in the basement or in the comfort of my own home, now I got to go see if I can really know if I've learned it under pressure, because that's going to give a whole different aspect. If you somehow seem to have mastered cutting a ball 85 degrees at a high accuracy in your own home, but then can you do that same high accuracy when that shot's worth $100? Like, I think that's the way I'm kind of going to answer that.
And I kind of agree to some point. I mean, the problem is that's kind of looking at the game as a physical game. And I look at this game as a mental game where there's a lot of challenges that you face in competition that you don't face on your practice table, and it's really hard to simulate. I go through a lot of work to try to visualize and anticipate and simulate. But in the end, if you played, if all you ever played was 9-ball, and then you go to a bank pool tournament and you've never played a bank shot, it's going to be very challenging. And it's like, to me, I feel like half of the battle in competition is managing your mind and your thoughts and your nerves and your brain. And so it's like, to me, if you don't practice and expose yourself to, if you don't practice the skills of competition, then you're not going to develop the skills of competition. So you said those 600 level. Here's what I'd say. I think you can get to 500 in your basement on your own. I think you might even be able to get to 550. I think maybe 600. But at some point, like, the difference in skill set between 600 and 700 physically is not as great as the mental differences, in my opinion. And I think most of that's developed through competition and trial by fire. So, but as far as leagues, practice, tournaments, I say yes to all. I say anything that brings you hours of challenge and joy and provides a good mix of all the challenges. And it depends on your goals, too. The other thing is, like, not everybody's trying to be a great champion, right? So if you're just looking to enjoy playing for the purity of the game once in a while and have a safe spot in your house where you can listen to music for an hour and just unwind after a day of work, play at home. If you're looking to have some social interaction and just have a night out, play leagues. If you're looking to be improving, then I like a good mix that gives you competition and time to experiment.
Low ceiling. Okay.
And then here, let's see.
There was another question I did see that I do want to answer. Horatio, you were asking about if it's the same. I'm guessing that's 9-ball break that's posted on my channel that we're describing here. No, I'm showing him a different 10-ball break, and it's not really as demonstratable as my playing the Ghost in 10-ball. So I will recommend both the 8-ball, 9-ball, and 10-ball breaking videos, but then when I'm playing the Ghost, check out the playing the Ghost in a Race to 3 for 10-ball. That would be the video that I would recommend that you check out. But what we have is, where did it go?
Sorry about that.
Roopster wants to know, Demetrius, what is in your case?
So
I had to just go get them.
Yeah. So I've got a BK Rush brake cue. I've got a Predator with a Revo 12.4 Kamui soft black something tip. I'm not an equipment freak. I'm not a fundamental freak, and I'm not an equipment freak. I stick to production, mainstream, kind of boring setup just because I know that it's going to get the job done. And the only reason I use the Predator is because it had the extension built in, so I can usually use the extension because I'm not particularly tall. So I don't know. I just it works. In the end, the only reason I use carbon fiber, by the way, guys, is because it doesn't ding. And when I used wood shafts, they would ding, and it was really irritating. And then over years, it would wear down, it would become uneven and stuff. And when I bought the Revo shaft, it wasn't because it played better. It was just because I know that it might be the last shaft I ever need. So I'm good on equipment. I got the BK Rush, the Predator Q, whatever. I'm good.
Eric Lyons, we are in Minnesota. I don't know if you want to get any more specific.
Minneapolis area. Oh, and then does he ever come to Maryland, Virginia? So guys, right now, I do my boot camps here. So people, if I have a slogan I was playing with, it was fly in, train up, run out. And so that's it. But that being said, so if you want to fly in here, it doesn't really matter where I am. You get a plane ticket, come in, train for 3 days, we're good. But there's a chance that I might be doing some stuff where if there's, a few pool rooms with, some type of 4-on-1 kind of clinic or something. But ultimately, I love 1-on-1. And so at this time, and there's no tournaments I can go to right now, although that hopefully that'll change soon.
Okay. Let's see here. Do you have any advice on playing with your non-dominant hand?
I rarely do. I mean, I can play comfortable. If I play opposite-handed, it's usually not like a long draw shot or something with a lot of power or difficulty. Usually it's just I got to roll in a ball. And so I've never, ever, ever played a single session opposite-handed to work on that. I don't know that I've ever practiced playing opposite-handed, but through just playing pool over time and trying a few opposite, I'd say just try. Just give it a try. And my guess would be, so what I don't know, I just feel like I just take a few warm-up strokes and then shoot softly and just kind of make sure I'm going through the whole ball. And I just keep, as long as it's simple shots with a rolling cue ball, I'm usually fine. If I have to draw my ball, spin my ball, then I get the bridge. But I just play good shape, man.
So I want to take that question a little bit further. So between your offhand, the bridge, and the extension, where would you think those 3 different mechanics fall in for specific types of shots? Because, like you said, I play enough with my left hand to where it's almost like it's nowhere near, but I can almost play just as good with my left hand as I do with my right hand. I don't know how to rate it. Like, if I want to do it on an APA scale, because I really don't know what it would be like on a Fargo rated scale, but I'm a 7 in 8-ball with my right hand. I think I would probably be a low 6 with my left hand. So if you were to choose between when to use the bridge, when to slap on your extension onto your cue, or when to pick the bridge, like, what type of specific shots do you think each of those would do?
And I think a good question is how often, because if I play an 8-hour session, so I'm playing for 8 hours, my guess is that I would probably end up using my extension 2 to 3 times. I'd probably end up using the bridge once or twice, and odds are that I would, on average, not shoot left-handed, but I might have one left-handed shot in 8 hours. I also might have one behind the back in 8 hours. Like, it's, for me, no, we're talking about this, but that's what, yeah. I mean, for me, it's like once in a while I'll shoot behind the back. Once in a while I'll shoot left-handed. every, but not very often. The bridge, I mean, really, it's like the extension. At first, I'll stretch for it. If I absolutely can't stretch for it, I'll get the extension, and then beyond that, it's like, the bridge usually only comes up like, I mean, it just doesn't. I just don't really come up very often. It just once or twice an 8-hour session. So because of that, so what I'd say is it comes up so rarely that like everybody, and then it's usually only on very simple, easy shots. Like I don't even remember ever being in a spot where I have the bridge. And I'm like, okay, I got to make this shot and then double the rail with high inside English with firm speed and break over this cluster. It's like, no, that's not what I'm doing with the bridge. I'm just trying to like cinch the ball. If there's anything I should work on, maybe it's frozen over balls where you can't really get the bridge. And but here's the thing, guys. Why would I work on it? Like it occurred to me. So here's my thought process. It occurred to me that it would be fun to practice that. Maybe that could be valuable because I can remember a time when it was hard to bridge over a ball. I can remember a time. Well, I can remember 100 times that I missed this routine shot. So that's what I practice is the routine.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's see here. Do you prefer kicking or jumping, and what jump cue are you using?
Yeah, it's all shot specific. Good question. So I am not as good at jumping as most top players are. So I jump if I can't, if it's going to be my best chance of either making a ball, getting a good hit, or getting saved. But I guess it just is a very specific situation. It's a very situation dependent. So I do half and half. I probably don't jump quite as often as the top pros do, like Fedor and these guys that are really, really good at jumping. But I jump more than effort. So it's like somewhere in the middle. And then what kind of jump cue? I use a poison. I don't know, poison something. But it's a wood shaft. It's okay, but I think I am going to switch. I hit a few jump shots with somebody who came over to my place, and they had this really nice. It was a Predator too. It was a carbon fiber Predator jump cue. And the thing, well, maybe I'm wrong on that. I'm not an equipment guy, guys. I might be wrong.
Well, because the Predator currently has a 3-piece BK Rush now. Like that's their latest thing. Because otherwise, the Predator has the Air 2 jump cue, which is a wooden shaft with a phenolic tip.
Okay. Maybe I'm wrong then. I tried a carbon fiber jump cue recently, and it was just really, really good. So I'm kind of interested. Would I recommend some kind of a universal specific extent? You know what, guys? I'll tell you what. Time up. I'll just sum up my thoughts on equipment, which is as long as you can like pocket balls, use side spin, draw, and it's nothing's like too gaffy where it deflects so much or it hits so bad that you can't play with it. I mean, I am not an equipment freak. I happen to have decent equipment just because, I mean, this is such a big part of my life. I thought it would be silly to play off the wall. So yeah, I bought some production cues that I know are quality enough to do my job. And now I'm kind of out of the cue market. So there's some people look at cars as a way to get to and from work. Other people look at it like they want to go to a 50s hot rod convention or something. I just need a cue just gets the job done for me. I'm not an equipment guy. So I'm gonna refrain from any other equipment questions because I just don't really care and don't think it matters. So unless I get a sponsor, in which case they play great.
All right.
Sorry.
So, okay, everybody. We currently have been streaming for 1 hour and 43 minutes. So I think at this point in time, we could probably go maybe for another hour before we call it a night. Because I know Demetrius and I probably still want to work on a couple of things before we go to bed. But this is where I'm going to turn it over completely to Demetrius and have what he likes to call the Coach's Corner. So, Demetrius, the floor is yours. And feel free to still ask questions, guys, because as he's doing his whole Coach's Corner segment, if he feels like answering a question, then he'll go ahead and answer a question.
All right. See you later, Tamway. Tan May. So, okay. This was kind of, I didn't really have a super long, like I didn't really plan anything too up, but I'll tell you what's been on my mind. This has been something on my mind a lot in the last few days or week. And that is the formula for improvement. And the reason that this has been on my mind is this has come up with students where I've seen this, and I used to feel this way. I had a lot of doubts about what I could do with pool. Am I going to be able to be good enough? Or how about, a lot of questions like, how much do I have to practice to get here? Or what would it be realistic? I get these emails all the time. What would it be realistic for somebody that has this much to invest? What could they do with the game? And all these different questions about improvement. Or how good could I get playing, without competing in pro? Could I be competitive at a pro level? These kinds of questions. So, and I'll tell you the mistake I see a lot of people make. And the one that capped it off is this 12-year-old kid. I coach this 12-year-old. He plays really good. I'll tell you what, man, this kid can play. You'll hear more about him soon. But he has doubts about whether or not he'll ever get as good as I am. And of course, I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, when you're 14, I hope you're beating me. You know what I mean? But
Right.
anyway, he has doubts. And so there's two ways I can reassure him. I can either say, you're something special, kid, and so there's people that have it and people that don't, and I'm here to convince you that you're someone that has it. And I can't do that because I don't believe that. I don't believe there's people that have it and people that don't. What I believe is that there's a kind of a formula. And so to use a really simple analogy, I have a staircase right by my pool table. So sometimes when students are talking like that, I'm like, look, when you walk up a staircase, do you stop at the bottom of the staircase, gaze up at the people on the first floor? I'm in the basement. So the people on the first floor and say, man, look at those people that are staircase climbers, man. Wow. I wonder if I can do it. I mean, I'm pretty confident I can at least walk up the first two steps. But man, I go up all the stairs? I mean, that's just absurd, right? So that's how I feel about pool. We have to take the mysticism out of this. We have to take this, there's winners and losers, and which one am I? Okay? Because that's not really how it works. It is a skill. You can develop the skill. And developing that skill has certain requirements. What does it take to get a 4-year degree? It takes 4 years. That's a requirement. It's like, what does it take to develop skills? And so, but the mistake, so the first mistake that people make is thinking that it's winners and losers, and then they don't know that they have what it takes. And so they get discouraged, or they don't give it their all because they just feel like, well, I don't know if whatever. It's like, so it's the wrong outlook towards it. But there's something else that's missing from their recipe. And that is, what is the formula of improvement? So improvement comes from effort. And effort comes from two parts, by the way. It's how much energy you're putting in on a day-by-day basis or week-by-week basis times the number of weeks. So if you're putting in 5 to 10 hours a week, but you're putting that in for 20 years, you're going to see different results than if you're, but if you're putting in 40, 50 hours a week, but you've only put it in for 2 weeks, that's not, you know what I mean? So it's a balance. Total effort comes from the energy you're putting in on average over the duration of time you put it in. So improvement comes from your effort, but that's not it. It's effort times the level of opposition that you're, the level of game that you're, I don't want to say competing against, surrounded with, kind of. So here's the problem. If you play in your basement, like I said about effort, he was never going to get top level if he hadn't been surrounded by top players and competing against top players and mentored by top players. And I challenge people, maybe I should be careful. There's probably one person somewhere that did something, but basically nobody has ever just kind of burst onto the pro scene and taken it by storm that didn't play with high-level players, get coached by high-level players, and compete against high-level players for a while before they really started making a well-known name. That's kind of how it works. And so the mistake people make is they don't realize that. And I'm going to speak personally now. That was the mistake I made. So I told you guys how much I put in the pool. And I will tell you that Chia-Ching Wu was 16 when he won the world championship. I promise you that I had every bit as many hours on the table when I was 17 as he had when he was 16. I promise you. It's physically impossible for that not to have been the case. But I guarantee you. So you could look at it and say, well, that's because he's a winner and you're a loser, and that's why you're just some busted out semi-pro. You could say that. Or you could say, he also had great coaching, great mentoring, and he played against higher level players that I played against. I stayed in a small pool hall in a small town, and the best players I played against were, good, but not great. And when I was 15, if somebody had told me this formula and said, you're going to be exactly as good as your effort times your opposition. And if we can get you into pro tournaments now when you're 15 and 16, so that you're playing sparring matches with Corey Deuel and Mika Immonen, then when you're 18, you're going to be playing just like them. I might have had a different trajectory. And I don't regret where I'm at. I'm actually really happy with how things worked out, like I said. But that's the formula. And so this 12-year-old, I feel very responsible when I play him to play as good as I can possibly play, because I know that he's going to get exactly 105 to 110% as good as my best team. That's the formula for improvement. Effort, which is energy times time, times the level of opposition you're surrounded by. Now, what does it mean surrounded by? So that's the formula. That's what the mistakes people make. They either think there's winners and losers, or they don't understand that they're capped by their level of competition. So that means that if you're not touring around playing full-time against international pros, you will not reach the international pro level. That's kind of formulaic. It's nothing wrong with you. It's just the way it works. That being said, what is a good strategy for somebody that cannot do that? What is a good strategy for somebody that lives in a small town, that lives in an area where there's not a lot of great players? I understand you can't tour around and play international pros. I get it. So what you have to do is the best you can to build a career plan that incorporates some of that. So here's some things you can do. One thing I talked about is watching pool, watching the top players. That was something I didn't have when I was in, you feel like giving Shane the 6 after that? Awesome stuff. Awesome. So thank you. Okay. So I had derailed because that was very funny. Thanks, Ruben. So one thing you can do is watch top pool. That was something I didn't have when I was growing up. Now we have YouTube, so we can watch that. Second thing is, you should sponge up everything that he's put on YouTube, all the good content on YouTube these days, as well as instructional material. I mean, you got to know that stuff. I mean, I don't know how you're going to be, like, if you don't take advantage, like, if literally people are bringing this, the mama bird is chewing the food up and trying, like, okay, you got to at least take the chewed up worm. Sorry that I realized what I just did there, but okay. So here's what you can do, is you can sponge up the content that's available online. You can watch top level pool. But then, ultimately, without the experience, like I said earlier, if you're not actually in the ring experiencing being run over, because here's why that works. When you work out, you break down muscles that then grow back strong. You could sit there and say, I need to get better at this, or I need to get better at that. But until you are in the ring, devastated by an opponent that just completely pulverizes you because you're weak in an area, so if somebody wanted to say, what's helped me the most with my break in the last 20 years? Like, I used a break rack for like over 10 years. My break did not get that much better. And I'm talking, I forced myself to sit there and break into this thing again and again and again, hours and hours and hours. I'm gritting my teeth, you gotta hit the break rack. My break didn't get much better. I played this VG10 virtual tournament where I played in front of 800 people, where if I didn't make a ball in the break, I had to rake the balls. I went down in flames in public because my break wasn't strong enough. I gained more from that one loss than I did over 15 years of breaking into a break rack. That's the power of competition, man. Listen, are you going to run faster when you're out for a jog or when you're being chased by a bear? Like, I'm sorry, that's how it works. If you're a competitor, that's how it works. We push each other. And so you have to put yourself in a spot where you're out of your comfort zone. There's people better than you that are punishing you and leaning on you and making you not just say, I'd like to work on that. I know I need to get better at that. But to feel like this sense of need, this is like sense of urgency, sense of need. This has to change. And I just saw how it worked. And it changes. You could say, oh, I know this is important. But then you say, no, now I understand how important it is. Like, oh, yeah, I know I should wear a seatbelt. You lose a loved one, you're like, okay, now I get it. I need to wear a seatbelt. Like, a different sense. So I'm kind of ranting, so I'm going to stop ranting. But here's the point. There's things you can do. So you can't do it every day. So then practice comes down to quality and quantity. You can't play international pool against top players every day, I get it. But you also can't just play at home. So why not set up a plan like that balanced food pyramid? Why don't you have some practice? Why don't you have some leagues? Why don't you have a sparring buddy that's your speed, that both likes to study and watch pool and work on your game? And then why don't you play some local tournaments? And then, how many tougher tournaments a year do you really need to sprinkle in? What if twice a year you went and played something a little bit out of your league? Maybe you go play where there's a couple of, world-class players in it. Maybe not the U.S. Open, but maybe like some, you're playing an event here in a week that's going to have like Sky Woodward and a few top players. 2 or 3 times a year. Take a couple days, go to a tournament where there's a couple name players. I don't know. I mean, listen, so it's not all or nothing. It's not I'm either going to quit my job and play pool pro, or I'm just going to hang out with my buddies. It's like, no, you can get your quality by playing those 2-3 events a year that are out of your comfort zone. And then you can remember those feelings and experiences and use them to increase the quality of your play during the quantity of hours you put into your practice table and in your local tournaments and your leagues. And then you can use videos and stuff to sustain that vision, remember what that was like, because it'll make more sense once you've done it. And then there's also coaching, I hear, where there's some really good players out there that are willing to not just like talk about pool, but actually break down and help you with your game. And I'm one of them. So it's, to me, if you're serious, you have, and one of the things I do, not only do I talk about the game, but I walk the walk. And I'm not saying I'm the best in the world, but like the ideas and the things I'm talking about, I do it, I show you how to do it, and then I have you doing it side by side with me until you can do it the way I do it. And we build the tools, we do all this stuff. So I think if you're serious about getting better, then you should come train, because I can show you, I can give you a lot of that high level pool experience and quality as well. So those are some options. Watching pool, getting coaching, YouTube videos, and a few tournaments a year to keep you hungry. So that was my coach's corner.
That was awesome. Because in regards to, I know a lot of y'all are probably wondering, what am I getting out of the boot camp? And right now I can say we're not done. We do have one more day of training, and then, like I said, we're going to have an exhibition match that isn't necessarily going to prove anything about his training, because he knows as well as I do that he's already exposed some things to me that I wasn't aware of on how I approach the table. Y'all have seen how I approach the table, because they're all over my YouTube videos, in my APA matches, in my Playing the Ghost matches, in my virtual matches on Bang Time Pools channel. You've seen the way I approach and break down the table. So, and I've been rather successful. So it's like, well, how do you get better? Well, there's things that Demetrius has been able to notice in the way I pick apart the table, to where it's like he interjects one little step, and that one little step just takes me a mile. And not that I'm going to try to give away any trade secrets of his boot camp, but we have had some discussions, and there are some things that he's going to allow me to disclose once I get home. So we're going to see some videos on those as to what were some of the big takeaways in regards to things that I can drill, things that I can practice on, and even some challenges and I specify the difference between drills and challenges. Some challenges that can actually really like magnify your game as well. So if you're wondering the value that Demetrius can have, think about it this way. If you understand how good of a player, or if you think of how good of a player that you perceive me to be as, in the way I portray information, in the way I do demonstrations in any of my YouTube videos or any of the live streams or anything, that has somehow been valuable enough for you to be able to improve your game, but then look at a player like myself. How high of a player does someone need to be in order to attempt to download knowledge into me? Well, to me, this is going to be living proof. So I've already received testimonies from people that were once skill level 2s and have gone to skill level 5s. To me, I've done my job if statements like that I'm receiving are absolutely true. Demetrius, you told me that you're like sweet spot is like the 650 to or the 600 to 650 Frogger. It's like you don't want to teach fundamentals, but you want to sharpen.
I'm good. When people are over 500, that's generally good. But what I would say is, it's not that I can't. Like, I've had people that come here that are missing some serious tools, whether it's fundamentally, whether it's mental approach, whether it's just understanding of the cue ball. I mean, I've worked with a lot of different levels. What I would say though is, I don't know that if you're struggling to, if you can't draw the cue ball, if you don't know how to use side spin without missing, and if you're still kind of like struggling to pocket balls, then it's not that I can't help, but I just don't know that you want to fly and spend 3 days with me to teach you something you could learn, at a local pool hall by asking a local instructor or looking on Chris's YouTube channel. Like, if you could learn it from Chris, just don't fly to me. And because I assume with my students, I assume that people have already watched Chris's content and have already put in a lot of work and read some books, and that usually the people I work with tell me that they've already read it all, they've already watched it all, and they already know it all. They all tell me the same thing. I already know all the information. I just struggled with execution. And then, it's like, no, but they think they do. But the point is that that's fine. Like, but I don't know why you'd fly to me if you're still learning stuff that's available. Then I don't know why you'd come work with me. But if you've done all that stuff and then you're like, man, it's okay. So let me tell you a funny story. I didn't tell you this one.
Go for it.
When I was a kid, I thought I could curve object balls. Because I read in a book about transferring spin, and if you transfer right spin to the cue ball, it's left spin on the object ball. And I knew that right spin made the cue ball curve. So I thought I could curve the object ball. And I was trying really hard. I was setting up these shots where I just needed the object ball to curve a little bit. And I tried really, really hard. And I couldn't figure out why the object ball won't curve. And I can't massay the ball. And then eventually I bet somebody that explained to me that you can't curve the ball. It doesn't work. And the moral of that story is, it's like how we try to interpret information. Just because I've heard that spin transfers doesn't mean I understand it practically or know how it should look. So I feel like pool is like putting together a puzzle. And if you have a 1,000-piece puzzle where you don't know what's on the cover of the box and you're missing like 60 pieces, it's really difficult to complete the puzzle. What I try to do is really give people all the pieces that they need, show them how they fit together, and then help them with a plan. If we can't finish the puzzle, like nobody finishes the puzzle, but you at least develop some of the missing pieces and show them where those pieces go in a way to where it's like everyone has knowledge and everyone has ideas, but this, from what I've seen, it's like a bunch of Frankenstein-like pool games that are kind of put together the wrong way. And then it's like, you just kind of have to like, wait, that's a little bit too much of that, or we got to tune this down or tune that up or tweak this, or you're missing this, and this goes over here. It's like somebody got something from IKEA and failed. So that's where, so get all the knowledge first, but then I'm here to help you put all those pieces together effectively.
Sweet. I like this question here by Horatio. What's the biggest takeaway advice that you can give someone with only 5 months of experience and with a late start, being 28 years old, in comparison to those who started with playing as a teen? I want to start first, and then I'll let you elaborate.
Yeah.
It's the only way I know how to answer that question is the way that I've treated pool myself, and I love your nightmare analogy of how much are you willing to devote to pool, to where eventually the price is your soul, and are you willing to give up all of that to become the greatest pool player in the world? Because when I started when I was 17, I can sit there and say, like, well, if I started when I'm 17 and I just recently turned 40, how come I'm not pro-level pool, basically? Because there was a point in time in my life where I finally decided that pool wasn't going to be my profession. When I was young and immature, that was like, it was a hunger thing. And then as I got more mature and then realized that, well, it's probably not the greatest decision in the world that I can make. I can obviously make an attempt at it, but I just didn't feel like it was going to be the thing for me. And when I made that sudden realization and became a software developer, as some of y'all should know, that's when pool became my hobby and not so much of like the burning hot passion of wanting to become a pro. I still have the passion. I always want to play good, but I'm certainly not going to devote the soul, the life, the effort to become a pro-level pool player. Now, does that mean I'm never going to beat a pro? Well, I'm not going to say yes, or I'm not going to say no. I mean, there comes a time. But the best match that I've had against a pro so far is against Justin Bergman in the Texas State Open. I lost to him 9-5, and I'm happy to win those 5 games against a 2-time Mosconi Cup member. I mean, that to me, that's a huge milestone because I'm certainly not going to look at it. Well, you lost, and that's so. To try to answer your question, Horatio, is realize what type of goals are you trying to set. And we talked about do you want to be the best in your local area? And to me, that seems like a very reasonable goal to strive for. And then once you feel like you achieve that goal, then ask yourself, do you want to drive 2 hours and maybe see if you're the best player in a 2-hour drive radius? And if not, how much effort do you want to put in to do something like that? And until you reach this stage where it's like, do you want to compete against international players? Because if you reach the stage of wanting to play internationally, I don't think age just freaking matters. Anybody that's obviously started younger might have a competitive edge, because I have received the question before is, does the amount of time of practice separate the players? And I would say no, absolutely not, because I'm 40 years old and playing the game for roughly about 23 years. Fedor Gors is like, what, 23 years old?
Oh, no, he's like 19 or 20, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe
he's in his early 20s or something. So clearly he's not been playing more pool than me, but would just run me over in a heartbeat. And I boil that down to, like you said, the quality of practice, his ability to learn, and how fast that he's learned. So it's a combination of both. And so if you can play a lot of pool and learn really quickly, then obviously you're going to excel, especially when you get the exposure of the pressure and everything else. Because if I go into really, really high-level tournaments that I'm just completely out of my league, I know that I'm going to buckle under the pressure. And then the more I do it, the more comfortable I start to become, and then the better and better I start to get. But then there's going to be this fine line to where, do I want to keep devoting the amount of time and effort I need to finally win that event?
So what's really interesting is that I kind of already answered this question about that was my coach's corner. It was like the formula for improvement. And what he just described was kind of like by walking up the stairs. He's like, I know this is what's going to happen, and then I know this is going to happen. I'm going to get beat, then it's going to be less off, I'm going to get less nervous, I'm going to start having wins, and that's just, he's been up enough staircases of improvement to understand how that looks. And once you take the mysticism out of it, then the bad news about that is, I'm not saying it takes away the drive, because I think you guys can hear from me, I'm kind of passionate about pool, and Chris, you're kind of passionate about pool. So, but the point is that once you stop looking at it as there's people that can do it and people that can't, I'm going to prove that I'm somebody that can. And once you realize it's just formulaic, it's like, yeah, I know I can walk up a staircase. That's a long staircase. I couldn't do anything else in my life. Do I want to spend my life walking up the world's tallest staircase that goes up the moon? It's like, I could, but is that what I want to do? So it's interesting that he has that same mentality. So sometimes that takes a little bit of enthusiasm out of it, like, boy, if that's all it is as a formula, then why am I doing it? And then it's like, yes, why are you doing this? But the good news is that if you're not doing it because of being the question about addiction, you're not doing this because you have this inferiority thing where you're trying to prove that you're a worthy person. You're just doing it because you happen. I don't feel that way, but yet I still love the game because it is fun, and boy, it's satisfying to develop skills and then put them to use. So I really like Chris's answer. I will say that you're 5 months in. What I would say is, be realistic and understand that, like that equation I said, it does take time and sustained time. So I have a student that's I'm working with that's actually probably 5 months in, and he's local, so I'm kind of working with him because he's passionate about pool, and he's very impatient. He's like, everything's going wrong because I still struggle with this. And I'm like, man, it's a long road. So settle in. Everything I said in my other answer applies. Watch all of Chris's videos. Get the knowledge. Watch Pro Pool, get the vision of how to put that knowledge together, and then try yourself. And rinse, repeat, and have fun with the journey, because it doesn't really go anywhere, and it's really, really, really long. So just have fun hitting balls.
I like that. Let's see, Courier 9-Ball. How many hours a week should you practice to increase skill level? Wanting to make it as a solid 6 right now, but no, right now he's a skill level 5. That's an APA question, so I think I can probably answer this. And I say the same thing because someone asked me before, well, how do you go from a skill level 6 to a skill level 7? And so when it comes to APA, you definitely have to be able to play your match with what you know. I always advise to my players, especially when I teach them something. The first time I make them aware of how to do something, I make sure to tell them, do not try to do this in a match unless it's an absolute Hail Mary time where like you just have to go for it. Because if you can't do it in practice, clearly you're not going to be able to do it in a match unless, of course, it's that 1% chance that when you flip a coin, it happens to just land perfectly on the side instead of it being heads or tails kind of thing. You absolutely need to know when to emphasize your strong points and when to just put away what you're working on, especially in a match-like environment. Because if you can do that and still lose, I guarantee you're going to figure out something else that's weak in your game other than what you're currently working on. Because you played your best and you just found out that your opponent outplays you. So you're going to take that, work on that as well on top of whatever it is that you're working on. And so I've said this example before. If you're losing a race to 5 as 5-2, you're not going to instantly turn around and win 5-2. What should happen in a gradual pace is that your 5-2 loss turns into a 5-4 loss. And then after that, it's going to turn into a 5-4 victory. Now, once you get the 5-4 victory, you're still not done. Because I always tell my players that I work with that when we win, we're not done learning. Because now what you have to do with your win is figure out why did your opponent get 4 wins? Because usually it's not going to be because they outplayed you. It's because you made a mistake. And you need to learn what that mistake is and hopefully correct it to where the next time you play, now it's a 5-3 victory. Now it's a 5-2 victory. Now it's going to be unrealistic that you're always going to win 5-0, but that's kind of what you should be like almost striving for, to the point where you can settle on yourself saying that against this particular player, I'm consistently winning 5-2, 5-3. And at that point, you should say, I've defeated this
Graduated,
player. Yeah, I've defeated this player. Now I got to go find the next person that's going to do this. That's going to have the same exact story effect on you. So how many hours should you practice a week? Again, that goes over the quality of what your practice is. If I can learn a ton of quality in an hour's worth of practice, then I'm going to tell you that it's going to be an hour because it's based on your ability to actually learn something. And it's very helpful if there's somebody there to tell you what you're weak at.
Yeah, I think I've already answered the same type of question enough times that I'm going to say questions about what can I do with this time, how much do I have to put in, all these types of questions. I think I've kind of beat that a lot. So I'm going to just kind of stick with what I've already said on that, which is, the same, hasn't changed in 5 minutes. But not that it was the exact same question, but they all kind of roll up. Now, I want to answer 2 things. One, I really want to thank, we got 64 viewers and right now, and I just want to thank you guys and the comments and the feedback we've gotten. People are saying some nice things, except for that one guy. I'm biting my tongue about that comment. But anyway,
that's okay.
Other than that, I love 62 of you guys. So okay. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, Chris, this is old news for Chris. It's kind of new to me, guys. I'm not used to like people like being nice to me. So thank you. I was, And then the question that I keep getting is what would I have? Desert Island 3 items. And so I've been kind of looking at that question. He's asked 3 times. He's really interested in which 3 items. And so the only items I can think about would be my pool table and then a computer, because I can read books online. I love to read. By the way, I'm a big Tolkien buff. So anybody that has book Lord of the Ring trivia, not the movie. I don't know who played who, but the Lord of the Rings, the books, you have Lord of the Ring trivia. I'll take it on. But otherwise, I love to read. But you can read on a computer. And you run out of books on an island. So I'd say, give me a computer with some type of library, online library, and then a pool table. My computer, I have Chris. I have YouTube videos with Chris. I can't think of a 3rd item. That's the funny part. Is I can only think of 2. So I guess I just need 2. Give me the pool table, and I'm good. What about you?
I'm assuming that the pool table infers that you also have pool balls and a pool cue.
Yeah, I would assume the full set. Oh, but that's like some Twilight Zone episode. Like the guy that couldn't read because his glasses were. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about.
Okay, let's see here. John Wash, would it be okay to post links to some pool tip files? I'm going to tell you no. It has nothing to do with that I have any doubts that you're trying to publish malicious material, considering that it's a file. So when I hear you say file, that means it's something that has to be reached through a URL. And as an IT guy, I would rather not. Now, if you want to post YouTube videos, that to me that's perfectly fine. But if I detect that a URL or a link is in the chat that is not something that I find reliable, I am going to delete it.
Mental game books. Yeah, Inner Game of Tennis. I almost don't even recommend this book anymore because I make the assumption that everybody in the world has already read this book. But I've read this book front and back probably 10 times. At times in my life, I've bought 20 used copies and given them to people. I've read this book to my children. I'm reading this to the 12-year-old that I'm coaching. I'm reading this to him because he says he struggles a little bit with his reading. I don't know that he reads a lot, so I'm reading it to him. Anyway, so Inner Game of Tennis, that's the alpha and the omega.
All right, cool. Well, let's see here. I think we're going to go ahead and start wrapping up from here. So what we're going to end this with is, Demetrius, I want you to really plug your boot camp from here, because there are people that are asking about it. So, like, what does it take to do a boot camp, or like how far booked are you? Like, when do you think you might be accepting openings? Et cetera, et cetera.
Very good. So, guys, let's see. Oh, yeah. How far am I booked? Right now, hey, John, what's going on? Yeah. John's on the chat. What's up, John? This gentleman, anyway, good guy. I appreciate he sent me a referral. He hasn't even made it out here yet, so I'm excited to meet him. Right now, I'm kind of halfway booked in March. I think. So what happened is I had a couple openings because there were some tournaments that I was planning on going to that got canceled. So I think I actually have like a 3-day in February that's open now. I've got a couple spots in March and a couple I'm scheduling that I haven't firmed up the dates yet. So I'm not that far booked out, and that was mostly because of COVID. With that second wave hitting, we had some things kind of calmed down a little bit, and but right now, as long as things are fine on the travel end, in my dojo, it's just me and whoever's out here. So I'm not worried about COVID because it's just 2 people. That's it. So if you're cool making the trip, and people that are driving distance 8-10 hours, easy. But if you're cool making the flight, Chris made the flight. He's still kicking. So okay, so that's availability. Now, what you need to know, you can check out my website, MN like Minnesota, poolbootcamp.com. I'm sure Chris will link it for me.
It's all in the description of the live stream.
Yep. See, I know all this technical stuff. It's already there. It's $1,500 for 3 days. I've looked at other. I'm not going to drop any names. There's a few other people that are doing some type of one-on-one pool training, and the numbers that I've seen for that are either I've seen over twice that amount, or I've seen group clinics with like 10 people in a group where they have a pre-arranged curriculum and they're like working you through the stuff that you could probably learn from Chris for free online. So what I do is totally different. I do one-on-one stuff where I watch you hit a bunch of balls, and then as you're hitting balls, I'm just going brum, and I'm just holding your game up to my game or Shane's game, and then filtering out the gaps and the misunderstandings and problems, and then I'm prioritizing them. And look, guys, I'm not looking to show off and tell you all this knowledge. I like, oh, here's something, like, I'm just saying what needs to change that's going to give you the most bang for your buck. We got 3 days, and I have a goal. One is improvement, not just immediately, although you will go home a better player, but with a plan to handle your mental game, your practice, your career, and a trajectory and a vision of where you're going, and you'll already be started. I'm not just going to point the way. We're going to do it together, and then I won't let go of the handlebars on the bike until you're going. So that's what I do. But then at the same time, I want it to be a life experience. So you guys, like grandmasters in chess, they play all over the world, and then they read and set up games outside of a coffee shop in Venice. I think I said that earlier. Or they're walking on the beaches and talking about chess positions because they can remember the games in their head. It's like, man, how fun would that be to study and with a grandmaster and you can't. So you guys you don't get to play professional pool. And you don't get to sit there and go to tournaments and be talking to Sky and Justin after a match and setting up positions and picking their brain and swapping stories and hanging out and eating out. But like here, you get to live that life for 3 days. We get to sit here and just go all in on pool and live pool and total pool immersion and set up positions and ask questions and break down and get some guidance and do what you've been kind of saying someday you're going to figure this stuff out or put that together. It's like, you know, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Let's go. So that's what I do. That's why it's a full experience. And so for 1,500, the guys, I'm kind of giving it away because I want to help, and I just need to charge enough that I don't have to go back to work full time, and then I can't help anybody. So legitimately, I just want to work with you guys. So.
And I will tell you firsthand right now, not even having completed the boot camp, that everything that I've gotten so far has been super valuable to me. So I definitely do think it is completely worth it. So Demetrius, thanks for at least stepping on my channel here to do this live stream. There is a question if we're going to be live streaming again tomorrow, and the answer is yes. We are going to do a New Year's Eve / ring in the New Year's live stream where Demetrius and I are going to play against one another. I guess we haven't quite worked out the details of what we're going to do as far as like how big the race is going to be. Like, do we do a short race to 7? Do we do a big race to 25? Or I think we're still trying to work that out because depending upon the length of the race is probably going to determine when the stream is actually going to start. Plus, we still have to get through tomorrow's 3rd day of boot camp.
I think we should do sudden death 7 ball, no safeties, 15-second time clock, foul on any missed ball. Sudden death. No, okay, sorry.
Goodness gracious.
I was just trying to remember that. Forget it. Okay.
But that is also in hopes of, you know, not knowing if anybody has any New Year's plans. But if you are staying home for the New Year's, then, you know, of course, jump online and join the stream with us because I'm pretty sure we're going to have maybe an alcoholic beverage or something so that we can just properly ring in the New Year.
I will if you will. If everyone's doing it, I mean, you know, that's fine.
Well, there you go. I think there's no better way to ring in the New Year with that.
Ruben keeps saying this. This is the second time he said, I think it's going to end in a tie. I'll tell you what, I can't say for sure who's going to win this match because I will tell you, in all sincerity, guys watching, listen, Chris plays way better. Like, Chris looks good in his videos. He plays better than he looks in those videos. I knew he played good. He plays really good. So there was a comment that Chris could go pro. Yes, he could. I mean, he's not playing like he couldn't tomorrow, but he could. Yeah, he could get there. He plays good. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll tell you this: it ain't going to be a tie.
Well, we're just going to have to wait and see and find out. I was already fortunate enough to beat my who I called my teacher of the game. I beat him in an exhibition match in a race to 3. So I will call you my instructor since I'm here taking your boot camp here. So I definitely want to hopefully at least give you some competition because I am pessimistic about the match that...
I am nervous as hell. I'll tell you guys that. I am anxious. I watched him play the 9-ball ghost last night, and I will tell you, he made a ball and ran out without taking ball in hand. I wasn't counting how many in a row it was, so I'm not going to drop the word package, but there may have been a package in there.
But you know, but that's without a player playing up against me. So we're just gonna have to wait and see. I'm really anxious to be, but
What time are we doing the match?
I do feel that you're gonna have the upper edge. Again, I think it's just gonna depend. I don't want to say like we're gonna start at like, oh, this is actually really difficult because since we're dealing with an international crowd more than anything. But I would want to think maybe if we were to start at 10 p.m. United States Central Standard Time. So I don't know what that is going to be across the globe, but I do know that's going to be already New Year's for like the West Coast.
If we start, 10 p.m. our time would be, they're 2 hours behind. They'd be 8 p.m. their time, but then it would be 9. It would be 11 East Coast. But my concern is if we play a match, like, are we thinking the match is going to be like an hour, 2 hours?
Depends on how we decide how long the race is going to be.
Let's assume that it's going to be 1 to 2 hours for the match. Did you want to have time to then jump on the chat and hang out with people before the ball dropped? You know, that's the question. Maybe if we started a little bit earlier, maybe if we started, 9 p.m. Central Time? Because if we started at 9, we could play the match. Even if it took an hour, 45 minutes, we'd still have over an hour to hang out before New Year's.
I think that probably sounds good. Yeah,
We'll have
so
time. Yeah.
you know what? We're gonna say tentative between 9:30 Central Standard Time. Guys, feel free to leave comments in the comment section below when the live stream does end. In regards to one, give us suggestions on what type of match do you think we should have. Because I think instantly we're currently thinking like some sort of 9-ball or 10-ball match.
Yeah.
But if y'all want to see something else, I'm gonna at least don't suggest one pocket, but I think I think anything else would be pretty much fair play. 8-ball, 9-ball, 10-ball, maybe even some straight pool or
yeah, I didn't even think about 8-ball. Yeah.
Or whatever. I think that should be a lot of fun.
Man, I should have held some of that stuff back today. You're gonna torture me. Oh no.
And then we can also, how long do you think the race should be? Because once we're in game mode, it's not like we're going to be able to really interact with the chat while we're playing. But then once the match is over, like Demetrius is saying, if there's plenty of time before the ball officially drops, then we can interact with the chat, and then close the stream off.
Yeah, so they're saying Ruben says 9-ball and 8-ball. You know what's interesting? We could do that. What would be interesting would be to play we could play a set of each. I think we could play. If we played a set of each, they couldn't be very long.
Correct.
Which scares me, but that's okay. Not to say but I'm just nervous. But maybe a race to 7 9-ball. See, a race to 5 8-ball might take a little time because this is not a bar table, guys. This is a 9-foot diamond. So, I'm actually not sure that 8-ball. I see the problem is I think if we played a set of each, the set of 8-ball would have to be really short because I've played sets of 8-ball. I know how that plays out, and I think that would make both sets kind of short. I think we're better off playing a race to 9-ball or something like that. Like that to me, I think so that's my vote. If you guys, I get a vote. I'm not taking charge here, but that's my vote. I think if we played a set of each, it would be a race to 5 9-ball, and it would be a race to 3 8-ball, and that's. I'd rather play a meaningful challenge set, But if you guys want it, if you guys want a super short set of each, and then I'm very very vulnerable, and Chris is gonna, crush me, and that's fine. We can do that. If you want to, so who wants to see Chris win? We'll do a set of each. And he could beat me in both divisions.
So clearly make some suggestions in the comment section below. We'll be looking at them, and then we'll try to make a final decision. So I want to say that tomorrow's live stream will be tentative somewhere between 9 and 9:30 Central Standard Time. So I think this is pretty much where we're going to go ahead and cut the live stream off for everybody that has been participating. Thank you so much for watching. Demetrius, thank you for joining me for this live stream. I hope you had a good time. I mean, it sounds like you did, and everybody heard all the wonderful stories that he had to have. So if you really want to see Demetrius beat the crap out of me, because I'm pretty much predicting that's what's going to happen, be sure to tune in tomorrow. Because until then,